welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast, the podcast that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. My name is George, and I'm joined by Justin, Dustin, and Brandon. And in tonight's episode, we are going to discuss the Four Pillars of Manhood, which comes from the book called Tender Warrior, written by Stu Weber. So before we go around and say introductions, I'm just really excited for this episode. I think the content in this one is just very core to what this podcast is about. And, I think a lot of the problems that we have in our society today is from a lack of the four pillars of manhood. And we'll get into some of those through this podcast, but I'm really excited, guys. I'm really glad you're here. So let's just go ahead and real quick just see how everyone's been the last couple weeks. It's been a little bit longer in between episodes because I was out in the field. So now that we're back, we're back to it. So Justin, how have you been, brother?
Oh man. So started a new career.
Awesome.
I won't say who with who, but let's just say medical sales. So they're going up, man.
Good.
Everything's falling into place. It's so funny. Everyone talks about how God has a plan. Well, I was taking a little flight and then it just nosedived and crashed to the ground and burned. And then I got in a new plane and now it's like.
There we go. Well, congratulations.
Good, all joking aside. Thanks, man.
Congrats.
Yeah, no, Bennett's hit some milestones. Speaking of fatherhood, he is rolling like a roly-poly, man. The kid, like today when I was on the phone with my mom, he rolled 3 times.
Nice.
And he's just getting it and pushing up and doing his whole thing. And yeah, so it's awesome. And now that I'm home and I'm not working 24/7, I've been spending some time with him. And man, he's just our relationship has grown. And he's actually in that phase. So there's different phases through childhood and infancy that my wife has been tracking, and the next one is relationships and recognizing faces and things like that. So I'm starting to see that in a room full of people, if I walk in, he smiles at me.
That's
or he
awesome.
Smiles at my wife. So it's cool. It's nice.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad you're doing good. Congrats on the new career. And I think since the last episode, I know work was really stressing you out. So it's good to hear that it's turned around for you.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. So I'm excited.
Congrats, man. Glad you're here. Brandon, how have you been, brother?
Man, I've been great. Started a new career as well, a new job. I am now officially a trade and research analyst for a fiduciary firm. And man, this job is above and beyond better than anything I've ever had. And it's so funny because like every previous job I've ever had built me exactly for this. So I know that this is God's will. And I can't praise him enough for it. Kids and the wife are doing great. My wife and I just celebrated our 12-year wedding anniversary.
Congrats.
And we're officially together for 22 years now.
It's a long time.
Doing great. Enjoyed the book, the Tender Warrior book. I've been doing a lot of exercise and walking lately. And man, I listen to audio version of it, and I just can't stop listening like cliff notes and little sections that he said that were just such great quotes. So I'm very excited to talk about it today.
Awesome, man. Dustin, how about you?
It's been great. I don't know if you all have ever heard of scalloping, but you go in about 5 feet of water and these little scallops are hanging out there and they look at you with their 1,000 little blue eyes. And they swim like Pac-Man. So they see you and they go, and they try to swim away and you get after them and you grab them and it's super fun. And then you fry them up in butter and garlic and it's absolutely delicious. We got out there for that. That was really cool.
Nice.
I found a little baby starfish for my son. He was super excited about that. So it was a really, really cool trip. That was fun. Awesome. And big highlight of my week, we helped remove a lava lamp from a man's rectum. That was a really special kind of tender moment. Speaking of tender work.
Wow. That's the joys of medicine, huh? Wow.
I don't even.
I just can't stop laughing. I'm just like, how does this happen? So
I mean,
wow.
I'm assuming it was an intentional insertion there, not accidental.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Genius. Wow.
It wasn't tight because it probably would have broke otherwise.
That means natural selection at play right there.
God.
But wow.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So we're doing the Lord's work at the hospital.
Clearly. Taxpayer dollars at work right there. Yeah. Man. Woo! And on that happy note.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Just a great couple of weeks. Happy to see you guys.
And the greatest part was pulling out a lava lamp. That's awesome. No, I'm just kidding. Man, we're glad you're here. Guys, I'm excited to be back. Had an extended Army vacation out in the field, so that's why we had to kind of postpone this one a little bit, but got a real good face tan. That's about it. And the neckline's probably really great. You can probably see it right there. So, no, we had a great time. Lots of blown stuff up, lots of ranges, basically every weapon system. So I got to go. I sent you some of the videos, but yeah, basically doing all the fun stuff of the Army, none of the admin
Those
stuff.
videos are cool.
So the rest of the year I get to do all the admin stuff. So it was fun to play for a couple weeks, but good to be home, man. I'm really glad to be back home with the family. My daughter obviously missed me. She's at the point now where she's old enough to like really know when daddy's gone, and even if it's just a couple weeks, she it's like, when are you gonna be home and stuff. And so it gets harder every time, but it was good for me on a personal level to get out, but I'm glad to be back home and back here doing this podcast. So why don't we just dive right into it? I've got a feeling that we're going to have a lot to talk about, a lot of different tangents we're going to want to go off on. So in the interest of time, let's just dive into the presentation and start talking about the book. Just for a little context for anyone who maybe hasn't read it yet, the book is written by Stu Weber, who kind of kicks off the book talking about what woke him up to realize he needed to set his life straight in a sense. But he was a special forces soldier in Vietnam and survived that, and then eventually changed course and became a pastor. And he's basically done that with the rest of his life. He's raised 3 sons. He's been married to the same woman his whole life. And basically he wrote this book kind of talking about how a real man, a man of God, a man who cares for his family and for others is not just a one-dimensional man and has multiple facets. And so that's where the emphasis for this episode comes in, called the 4 Pillars. He calls them the 4 Pillars of Manhood. And that's the chapter we're going to dive into. And then a little bit of the next chapter kind of ties into this one really well. So let me go ahead and get this presenting. Here we go. Go live, and you should be able to see my screen. Let me get the Discord out of the way so I can see you boys, and we will present. Can y'all see it?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. All right. So the 4 Pillars of Manhood. The subtext of it is a man and his roots, and like I said, these notes are created from my reading of Tender Warrior by Stu Weber. So giving all credit to the author. We are not trying to take anything from him, but this is an outstanding book. If you are maybe struggling or you want to just be a better man in general, I highly recommend you read this one. So let's talk about the 4 pillars right into it. The 4 that he defines are king, warrior, mentor, and friend. And he calls these the 4 unshakable pillars of masculinity. And the point that he draws out too in this chapter is that you can find these in scripture, but you can also find them in secular history as well. So if you look at men across history and in the Bible as well, that are kind of comprehensive men that basically everyone looks up to and admires, they're most likely going to have all 4 of these pillars in their life and displaying them in balance. And so he also makes it very clear through this chapter that balance is important of the 4. So we'll get into that, the why, if you're out of balance, how that can play some really negative impacts in your life and in society. But let's go through quickly. Maybe what we'll do is I'll go through the 4 pillars, kind of a little bit deeper dive, so we have some context, and then let's maybe talk about them and kind of kick it back and forth, guys. Your thoughts and reactions and things like that. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
All right. So we said king, warrior, mentor, friend. The first one, king. All right. So this isn't like an authoritarian, right? There's authority, but that's not like ruling like a tyrant. So, a noble king, a good king, has a provisionary heart. And so if you think about that, this is where the provider aspect of men really comes into the forefront in modern society. Is, you provide for your family, you're thinking ahead, you have a plan for your family, you're looking out for them, right? A good king, a good ruler would think about his people and try to protect them from, hardships in the future and prepare them for those. So that's where, as a father, as a husband, that role of king is vitally important. And then to dig a little bit deeper too, right? They watch over, they protect, but you also provide order, mercy, and justice. And so I just want to make it very clear that when he says you're a king and that's one of your roles as a man, it's not to lord over, it's not to be a tyrant, it's not a dictator. A noble king cares for and protects, and there should be order and justice within your kingdom, right? And And so this is important too, because I think, well, I don't want to go too off into tangent, but a lot of men today have forsaken their role as king. And that's why I think there's so much turmoil in homes, in our families, is that men aren't taking their role seriously. And a lot of times they actually yield it to their spouse. And that causes discord, not order, right? It creates the opposite. It can create animosity between you and your spouse, right? Women and men are created in a certain way. And so if you adhere to the scripture, or you believe the scripture, God makes it very clear that it's not just a recommendation that you be the head of your household. It's a God-given instruction. So if you're not doing that, you're quite literally not meeting the mark. So that's the first pillar. The next three pillars have a little bit more depth to them in terms of what we want to talk about. But the next one is the warrior. And so the warrior has a protective heart. And the warrior shields, defends, and stands between and the guard. So I think this is something that a lot of men can identify pretty easily with, but I know that there are also a lot of men, maybe depending on how you were raised, that this will seem very awkward to you, or maybe not natural. But I really love the part in the book where he talks about how men stand tallest when they're protecting and defending. And if you think about it, what endears you to like a good father figure is one that cares for and protects. And then there's a huge thought about investing yourself, the energy of the self-disciplined aggressive action, right? So it's not a brute. It's very clear that through scripture and then also secular examples, men who are warriors and are protectors are not brutes, right? You're not a savage who goes out and just abuses your power. It's restrained, disciplined, aggressive action, right? It's controlled force. It's controlled aggression. And it's very important too, if you think about your family, right? You're the protector of your family. There probably is a time where you have to fight, right? And maybe that fight isn't even physical, but when it's time to fight, you need to be there to stand between your family and whatever harm they're facing. And then the other part that kind of gets into your emotional, spiritual realm is high moral standards and high principles. So he kind of capstones this in the book with saying that you're willing to live by them, stand for them, spend yourself in them, and if necessary, die for them. So it's a very serious role, very huge pillar. But just wanted to make it very clear, you're not a brute. It's a measured response. The next one is mentor. And so this is one where I have a couple thoughts about, the whole term mansplaining. Really want to kind of go off on a tangent on that one here. But men are inherently designed to know things, right? We have a heart that's a teaching heart. And, I'm very much this way. Like when I know something or I learn something new, I want to help others learn it too. Like I get excited about, hey man, I learned this awesome thing. Like I wanted to pass it on. So I think that's just honestly how we're wired. But it's also one of our roles that is ordained to us for our families, for our friends. You're supposed to model, explain, and train. And then you disciple. And so you disciple first your family, your wife and your kids, and then others. And I think that's a key thing too, that I've heard it said to me that your first ministry is your family. And so I think that's really what that is saying there. But it's also a spiritual heart, right? It's not just knowledge. It's not just book knowledge. It's comprehensive knowledge about life. And I think that's the next point. It's, things, men are supposed to be able to teach life. I love that line right there because life is so much more than just what's in a book. It's so much more than knowledge about a sport or a car. It's a comprehensive thing that we all experience together. And our role as men is to be knowledgeable about them. It doesn't mean you have to be the smartest guy in the room or any of that kind of thing, but it's you are designed to pass on what you've learned to your children, to your friends, and to others. So, and this is where I wanted to get into the mansplaining just a little bit, and I'm sure we're gonna have lots of discussion on this piece. But, I think this is one of the biggest attacks on men is, oh, well, you're mansplaining, or oh, you're trying to, because you're a man, you think you know better. And I don't think that's the case. I think many, many times men are genuinely wanting to just share a better way of doing things, and it's out of compassion and wanting to help others, and then they're shot down, as mansplaining. So, I think if Stu Weber went off script and talked about that, he'd probably have a lot to say about it. But that's what popped in my head when I was reading this chapter. And then the fourth pillar is the friend or the lover, but not to be mistaken in the erotic sense. It's more of unconditional love, compassionate love. So the friend is the function that's most endearing, and it's a loving heart. Okay, so it's a caregiving heart, passionate, yes, but even more so compassionate. I will be with you. And the loving heart is a commitment maker. It's a promise keeper. So it's being a man of your word. And this is from a secular doctor here, this quote. It says, the energy that connects men to the others and to the world. And so that's where we're going to just leave it for now and get into discussion, guys. But those are the 4 pillars. So now we have some context. Let's just go around the horn, just initial reactions when you guys first read through the 4 pillars and your thoughts about them, and kind of just how it struck you on that first read. Floor's open.
I think there were some amazing points, both biblically and just in this world. There's so many things that people are lacking in these pillars, and I think that's what has caused such a toxic attack on men in general. So a great example of that is a man will claim to be a Christian. He has a lack of understanding of what headship and leadership truly is as the leader of a family. And he's also lacking the word. He's lacking true spirituality, spiritual connection with Christ, and he's not anchored in Christ. So instead of being a leader that is compassionate, that is loving, that is stoic in the sense of sticking to the word and sticking to the hierarchy that God has set in place, they are abusing and using, like you had said with the warrior, the brute, like it's my way or the highway. So I feel like so many men have tarnished a lot of these pillars, and I think that's where a lot of people have tried to attack from, is they're using those people that are bad examples of what real men are, and they're going after that kind of person, and they're blanketing everybody else that's a man in that. So I feel like for us to grow and to be altruistic to other people, we have to exemplify the real qualities, the good qualities, and show people what a real man can be, and do it with authority and confidence, because Christ and the Word has ordained it.
It's good. I like that. Anyone else? Your initial thoughts to the 4 pillars? Justin, I think you're muted, brother. Dustin, go for it. He's too slow.
Okay, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, so this book really resonated with me a lot. There were a lot of kind of key points that it was written a number of years ago, but I think the pace of how much society has changed has accelerated drastically in the past decade. And great example that he didn't address, but that I think we can talk about a little bit, is the concept of toxic masculinity. So that's maybe a good one to get a definition of. That's realistic, right? We don't want to lampoon it, because it is a real thing. It's something that people take seriously, and it's something we have to address whether we believe it or not. So a toxically masculine man mansplains everything, doesn't want to listen. He's a little aggressive, or a lot aggressive. He sexually harasses women. What else? There's a number of character flaws that we would associate with a toxically masculine man. I think the problem is it starts to encompass more and more of traditional masculinity and positive qualities, right? So a man who wants to help and genuinely wants to be a part of someone's life, but wants to take a leadership role, is often considered toxic, right? And so the challenge is, as a man, working within our current culture and lifestyle, and what's considered acceptable, and it's really going to depend on each person that you talk to. So it's a really difficult, confusing time to navigate as a man who, let's say, has the 4 pillars underneath him, right? He's a leader, he's a friend, he's a mentor, and he's a warrior. That kind of man, I think, is going to struggle in some industries and in some situations, because he's going to be looked at as toxic. And so my hope is that our society moves back to accepting a man who genuinely wants to help, wants to protect, and wants to lead. And those are positive things, because right now, I think if you talk to a lot of people, they would consider a man who wanted to do those things as toxic and bad and antisocial. And that's a scary situation that I think our society is entering into. So if you guys don't mind, I might play a little bit of devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Because I don't want all four of us to say this is the best book ever, and we're just gonna, we love Stu Weber. I mean, I respect a lot of what he about, and I love what he talked about. It really resonated with me. But I think it'd be helpful if I bounced back a little bit and said, okay, I'm your modern woke dad, and here's how I would respond, to those ideas. So if that'll be helpful, I'll play that role.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, we're not here to just be an echo chamber. I know a lot of us kind of have a lot of shared beliefs, but yeah, I mean, the goal here is to try and challenge each other and to grow. So I'm all for it.
Yeah,
I'll play off of that actually a little bit. So the thing that kind of resonated in me is the king side of things. I guess the first pillar, which is funny, it's the first pillar because I think it's the most important pillar to me personally. Because as a father, yeah, you're supposed to be loving. Yeah, you're supposed to be, all these other things, but you are the leader of your family, 100%. And I think the problem is society. Everybody's so independent these days and has their damn opinions. And let's be real, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one and they stink. So at the end of the day, it's just like, it's so many opinions since social media has come up. Let's just be real. Like everybody has an opinion and they're so quick to just butt into not only, someone's conversation, but societal, I guess, hierarchies and the way things are built. And I think the family in that aspect is the man should be the leader of the family. And and that goes back to biblical times. That goes back to, hell, just our society as a whole before it took a left turn out of nowhere off a bridge. So I think that the problem is, personally, today, in my opinion, is I think that the king aspect is the most important because society doesn't see men as the leaders anymore. And I think Stu did a really good job of visualizing and pointing out that a man can be easily distracted and, go out and hunt wildebeest instead of hunting the path and paying attention to where and scouting where he needs to be so that his family, when they follow, can follow in a good place instead of a dangerous place. And I think that's incredibly intelligent the way he put it. So a king is probably the most important to me because, like you said, George, they provide order, they provide the mercy and the justice. A father shouldn't make the mom the bad cop and be the good guy. Oh yeah, haha, mom's the bad guy. No, the dad should play both roles. Hey, you screwed up, son. Like, you can get your little butt whooped, or I'm gonna tell you why you did wrong, and then I'm gonna teach you how to fix it. There's not enough of that anymore. Fathers are so. And I said this wrong in the first one. Detrimental. I'm an idiot, I know. But no, they're essential was the word I meant in the growth of any child. And I think that's such a big thing, is being authoritative. And I think that's the problem with society today, is that nobody respects authority anymore.
Well,
so not having a father around teaches you that you can get away with whatever. Being that authoritative figure saying, hey, no, you screwed the hell up, man. Like, we need to sit down and talk about this, and not be that heavy hand, like you said, like a brute. You don't want to just come down on your child and, spank them or beat them or whatever. I mean, sometimes they need that, but you need to be able to say, just one-on-one, have a great conversation with your kid if we're relating as a father, and just say, look, this is where you messed up. This is how I would have handled it. This is how I'd like you to handle it in the future, and just, kind of go from there. So, I mean, I don't mean to go on a tangent, but I think king is probably the most important. And I think also kids need to understand, in my household, at least, my wife is the queen. And that means she is above the prince. Bennett will not ever take a place above my wife. And he's going to understand that his mother is to be respected, and she is to be viewed as, somebody that is to be looked up to and appreciated and loved. And I think that's also disappearing from the family aspect, because mothers are taking on so many roles, and they're having to become independent, especially single moms. They're playing both roles, and it's just, there's a lot going on. I think king to me is probably the strongest pillar. Just
And that's half the reason a lot of people have such a negative view of men in general, is because most men are not responsible enough for their own actions to actually step up and be dads.
Right.
They bail out, they leave, they let whatever that's driving them, whether it's selfishness or whatever other motivation it is, take over, and they leave the child and the mom to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, no wonder our society is eroding, and no wonder men are not seen as good. And Stu mentions that, the warrior, or any of the pillars that are being shown authoritatively, like in the brute, is not a popular figure in today's society. And he said that women and children need to be protected from such men by faithful warriors whose lives are in balance.
Right.
So that's like the good mentors that you see, and the good guys that actually stepped up and they kept to their word, and they stayed around even in the harshest of times. They stayed being a father and stayed present. And I mean, that's like you said, George, earlier. That's exactly what our podcast is about: is equipping and teaching men to be present, regardless of the sacrifice, regardless of the pain and the struggle, because every hard in life, like any choice you make, is going to be hard. You can fail hard or you can succeed hard. You got to choose your hard in life,
right.
And so you want to choose the one that benefits your family and other people the most, especially your children. And I think the absence of fathers today is just one of the biggest issues. Like, everybody says reform this, reform that, like, when it comes to education and things, but man, it's just get a home that is actually a man and a woman together, actually living by the structure that God intended, and then let's start changing things as we need to. But there's so much missing from that just by itself, and that's such a huge impact on children.
Yeah. So I'd like to read a quote from the book so we're talking about the balance, and I'll get back to the presentation here after I read this, but he's talking about the balance of having the four pillars and what that provides. And so it says, like 4 strands of steel, they were woven together to form a cable that is the spine of masculinity. A good man is the balance of the 4. A good warrior is also a sensitive lover, a tender warrior. A good friend is always a helpful mentor. The 4 are inseparable in a good man. In balance, they are every man's purpose, every woman's dream, and every child's hope. Abused, they are the curse of every man, woman, and child. And so I think that's kind of what we were hitting on. And let me pop over back to the presentation here. Because here's exactly what you're talking about, right? So, you can't be just one or just a few of these pillars. If you are, something's going to be out of balance, and something in your life is going to be paying the price for your lack of developing or paying attention to that pillar. And so I think also we're all probably naturally good at one or two of these more so than the other ones. Like, so for me personally, empathy, massive weakness for me. My whole life, I have to put a lot of effort into being more empathetic, being compassionate, right? It's the tender aspect of the warrior. And not like I'm some badass or whatever. That's just how I am. I'm just kind of a cold, calculated individual. It's just, maybe it's a product of my environment, or just I'm born that way. I don't know. But, I'm sure everyone would have a different tale they would tell about which 2 or which 3 that are natural for them and which one is their weakness. So it's not saying that this is like an easy task, right? This is something that takes work and effort. And that's why it's so important to first, you have to understand what they are, so you can even identify how to improve, right? If you don't know, like I've heard it said, if you don't know where you're going, you can't lead anyone there yourself, right? So you have to know your purpose. You have to know where you're going to. And in order to know where you're going to, you have to know where you are also, right? And so then you can find the gap between the two and start course correcting. But so I love that quote from the book. And again, just making it clear that abusing any of these pillars is the curse of every man, woman, and child, right? The brute example, or the king being a dictator, not a benevolent ruler, right? It's not meant to give you extra power over to extort them. Everything is supposed to be out of love and compassion for your family, for your wife, for your friends. It's never supposed to be how can I extort these people for my benefit, right? That's abusing the pillars. So I think where I wanted to go to and really start talking about this, because this is kind of the brass tacks of it all, right, is the initiation, right? So masculinity means initiation. And at our core, a man is an initiator. So in the Hebrew language, the term for man meant piercer. And in the anatomical sense, yes, you pierce your spouse, but it's also in an emotional sense, right? We have to be the ones to take the first step and to initiate connection. So it's one who penetrates, moves forward, and advances towards the horizon, one who leads. There's an example kind of talking about on page 49, like imagine if there wasn't the initiation. Have you ever seen an orchestra without a conductor, a team without a quarterback, a boat with no rudder, a compass without a needle? Pretty pathetic. Nothing works right. Ever seen a man without initiative? Like a compass without a needle, he is not a compass. A man without initiative is not a man. Masculinity means initiation. To be masculine is to take the initiative, to provide direction, security, stability, and order, to lead, to head, to husband. Masculinity means initiation. Nowhere does it say bossy, but more on that later. So I just love that piece of it, because it's great, right, to be all these things, but you have to put it into action, right? It's action, not words. So yeah, we can probably pause here. I want to let you all kind of get words in too, but that was a section that really stuck out for me there. I'm trying to get back to here we go. Hopefully that's
No, I'll say something. So to go on to what Brandon was saying with structure and things, like if you look at any old good like war medieval times movie, without a king, kingdoms fall,
right.
and the king is supposed to lead that kingdom. And so I think that's something, as a present father, that is literally what this podcast is about. We need more kings. We need guys who will step up to the plate instead of, oh, I'm going to run away from my responsibilities, or, oh, well, it's not my fault she got pregnant. Yes, it is. It takes two to tango, like stick around and realize how incredible whatever you have ahead of you is a blessing, and like actually be there for that child. Because I'll say this, man, like just personally, being a dad is something I've always wanted to be. So it's a little different for me. But now that I am a father, man, I can't get enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's so addictive, man. And like that child just loves you unconditionally. You can have everybody in the world absolutely hate you, but then at the end of the day, that kid's never gonna hate you. He's gonna always love you and be there. And it's just, I don't know. It's a good feeling, man. And I wish more dads would understand if they stuck around, or if they, stayed true to these pillars and were that man that is there for their family. I think they would get to feel some of those incredible feelings,
Mm-hmm. Dustin, got anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely have a crisis of leadership in this country. Working in healthcare, I see this every day. It's just a disaster in terms of what used to be a well-run ship is just the inmates are running the asylum now. And you see that in lots of other industries as well, and it's a real challenge. Again, to play devil's advocate, I think women can be fantastic leaders.
Yeah.
In fact, I think organizations that have some female and some male leaders are better run than purely male leaders. So I think there is something to be said for some of the leadership coming from women. I think a woman would make a great president. I think there's a lot of situations where women can be fantastic leaders, even within the family unit. I grew up with a single mom. It was tough, but she did a fantastic job. I know there's some holes. I don't know how to fix a car. There's some stuff that, I definitely missed out on the dad time for sure. But as far as can that work, it definitely can. Is it ideal? I don't know. It's hard to say. But I think always saying that the man, the genetic male, has to be the leader in every type of situation, I think is a mistake. I think it's okay to cede, some leadership to women because they do a great job, and we've seen, that work really well. That being said, as we've seen this massive transition to the majority of leadership roles, I would argue going to women, 60-70% of graduates from college now are female. All of your doctors, all of your lawyers, all of your people going into positions of power, they're all female. I don't know why, but the American man has kind of abdicated power and leadership. There's just not much interest among boys into getting into positions of power, being fathers. And you guys might be able to, enlighten me on this. But our society has shifted so radically, in the past 20 years, where I don't know if it's entertainment, where the idea of playing video games all day or of, just entertaining ourselves in other ways is just too appealing to men, whereas women naturally, have more of a tendency to, want to succeed in school. Or I don't know the reason for it, but I'm happy to show you guys the studies on it. It's terrifying. Boys and men are falling so far behind. And even if it was 50-50, that'd be great. If half of your doctors, half of your lawyers are women and half are men, but it's not. It's like 75% of all of your graduates are female now. So something happened, not necessarily in our generation, but the generation after, where American boys just lost their mojo and have just decided they don't want to be fathers, they don't want to be leaders, and they don't want to be successful. And I'd love to hear your insight on why we think this is happening.
Yeah, I'd love to comment on that. So I think it's a lack of that. This whole generation's lack of actual real fathers that had balance in these pillars. They never grew up around it. They didn't experience it, and usually it takes a lifetime to learn these things the hard way if you're doing it solo or independently. And as far as the woman is concerned, so I don't want this to come off sexist, okay? Because women are perfectly capable of being great leaders. My wife is my first mate. I am the captain of the ship. And the reason why we stick to that is not because I need all the power or any of that stuff. It's because it's my responsibility to bear that burden. Women are naturally and biblically built to be caretakers and lovers of children, and lovers, like they produce life, not just physically, but in an emotional and spiritual sense in a household. Like my wife, amazing. She is the backbone of our family as far as emotional. So I feel like God knew exactly what he was doing when he had us set in certain places. Now, again, this is situational, obviously, because some households don't have fathers. Some households have very different situations, like the father may be terminally ill or sick, something to that extent. So obviously, there's going to be different situations, but in the most common situation, the man being the leader is going to take the burden and the pressure of the responsibility of leadership so that the wife doesn't have to take that burden. And that's part of that sacrificial part that I think Stu was trying to touch on. So for me, it's the man taking on the role, kind of in the warrior aspect of, I have to take on the burden because I want my wife to be free to do the things that she wants to do with our family. I want her to be able to not be burdened and overpressured, especially in today's society, because there's already enough to worry about just being in a normal family environment, much less social media.
My apologies. So I don't know if you just want to kind of wrap up the last thoughts you had there about your roles within your home and why it works.
Sure. Yeah. So what I was saying was that the structure that God has intended, just it's set there to protect us. Just like, the rules that we adhere to our children, like if they're in a room about to stick their hand in a socket, there's a rule not to get near those sockets because we know what things can happen or what dangers there are in our rooms. Mm-hmm. And so we create boundaries and we create safeties to protect our children. God's done the same for us with a family structure. And he's built men and women in certain ways that just they harmoniously work together to create protection for our children and for ourselves. So I just feel like that's such an important thing for people to think about when they're thinking about leadership. Yeah. But in no way is a woman not capable of being an amazing leader, especially when they have to step up as a single mom, Mm-hmm. So.
I was going to actually interject earlier that I don't think what Stu Weber is talking about has anything to do with anything outside of like the home and the core family, the nuclear family sense. That's at least how I'm interpreting it. When I read this book, nothing in this said that in all aspects of life, men are the only ones who can lead. I think that would be ludicrous. Right. For one, like quite frankly, there's lots of things my wife can teach me about that I know nothing about because she's for example, she's been going to school for years now to be a veterinary technician. And when it comes to anything on animal medicine, I'd be an absolute fool to think that I'm going to know better than her. She's literally gone to, been educated, right? So that's just an example of so when it comes to dealing with our pets, I totally take backseat. Hey, honey, what should we do? The dog threw up, I know nothing. I'm the student. She's the master. There's no, so I just want to make that clear that when we're talking about these senses, it's more in the role of raising your kids, being a husband, at least that's how I interpreted it. I mean, maybe that's just my view of it, but fool. I don't think anything. Yeah.
You can't say
fool. We're not monetized yet, whatever. So, I mean, if that was the case, then every streamer on Twitch would be, completely banned already. So, whatever. We'll see.
You know me, I'm always gonna stick that foot right in that mouth.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, but my point is, I don't think that he was writing this with the intent of saying that a business shouldn't be run by a woman or any of that kind of thing.
Right.
In my opinion too, I think that running a business or whatever has absolutely nothing to do with a family. Quite frankly, right? A business it's there to make cash. It's to turn a profit. Yes, you can still be about doing good things in the world, but at the end of the day, if you're not making money, your business is dying. That's not a family. A family is so much more than that. There's so much more, you know what I mean? So I think to equate the two is actually damaging, quite frankly, because if you're going to degrade what a family should be to, oh, it's a business, that's sad. I mean, if you lived in that environment where it was just basically a business, I feel like there'd be a lot of tenderness missing from that household, right? So that was just
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the most important words, actually, my dad taught me this. One of the most important words for family is dynamics. Everybody has a dynamic, you know what I mean? And I think with my family, it's not the traditional nuclear family. I'm actually, Dustin put out a very good point. There's a lot of women doctors, there's a lot of women lawyers, there's a lot of single moms. And Dustin's mom, I've actually met her at his wedding, and she seemed like a pretty damn incredible person. And she had to take on both roles. That's completely different than what we're talking about. I don't want people seeing this podcast and automatically, oh, let's cancel them because they think women can't be the king. Well, I'm not saying you're supposed to be or you're not supposed to be the king. I'm saying in a traditional family, the king rules with the queen, not rules over the queen. George has mentioned multiple times. Let's make that very clear. Stu even says, the king is one there to guide. He's not there to be a tyrant. I think that's very, very important. But on the flip side of that coin, Dustin brought up a very good point. Growing up in a single mom home, it's different dynamics there. That's uncharted waters for a lot of people. It's not something that someone ever plans. Hey, I'm gonna be single and have a child. It sucks. And so, I mean, like I've said repeatedly, this is the exact point of this podcast. We need more fathers. It's not about fathers taking responsibilities from mothers, because let's be real. In my household, my wife is the breadwinner times 10. I'll never make as much money as she does unless this blew up or I win the lottery. Short of that, I'm screwed. And let's be real, I've also dated some very without getting sued, what's the nicest way of putting this? Very headstrong, very independent women. So I like strong women. I like women who will, have some ambitions and have different thoughts than the traditional female who just rolls over and takes it, not figuratively, figuratively, not
1950s
Sorry.
there.
Yeah.
Very poor choice of words.
Which
We can cut that out.
No. It's fun. Come on, man. Anyways, Dustin's over there I don't know this guy.
Dustin's he's like, how can I tag onto that?
No, Dustin loves it. He gets it. No, I mean, I didn't say anything wrong. I mean, let's not apologize for what we feel and think. I mean, that's probably part of the reason society's so screwed up. But.
Yeah, I mean, so let's get into, what Dustin, you were saying, let's talk about why that is, right? Why is it all women graduating, taking doctor roles, lawyers, all that kind of stuff? Couple of thoughts there. So I guess I'll pull up the presentation again. I'm hesitant to present, guys, because it kind of ruined it last time. So I'm gonna just keep kind of talking it. If you want to pull it up, I think I sent you the presentation. But there's a slide called "Where Are the Kings and Warriors?" And in society today, the king and warrior qualities are suspect. For one, they seem to be the most tarnished and eroded of the four pillars. And if you think about it, like hardly anyone objects to being like a mentor or a friend, right? But a lot of our society resists the king and the warrior. And then on top of that, like you're saying, men, you said it yourself, Dustin, it appears that boys and men are abdicating authority. And authority and strength seems to be questionable virtues in our day. I bet if you asked a lot of people, they'd say that strength is actually a toxic trait. And strength isn't just physical strength. It's not how much you can bench press. It's we'll get into this, and it's kind of where I want to wrap this all up is the concept of staying power and perseverance, endurance. But without authority and strength, we're hollow men. We're empty. And so this is where I think like the whole concept of like modern feminism, and I don't know all the terms, guys. I'm not an expert on it. I have zero interest in trying to understand any of that because, quite frankly, I think it's just a perversion of what empowers women. And in many cases, I think today people are trying to say that men and women are the same, but really what they're doing is just saying they're just trying to draw out from each to make lesser, so then you're the same. And I don't think that that's empowerment for either gender. I think that men excel at certain things and women excel at others, and that's I believe how we were created. But I think to say, oh, men, you shouldn't do this because you're good at it, and women can't do it as well, just makes everyone lose, because then on the exact same, the flip side of that coin is there's things that women are better at that men aren't. And so if we both couldn't do these things, then now society's losing. But I think there's something about in the role of fathers in a nuclear family that has such a fundamental role in kind of how children turn out in life. Like I think the stat he wrote in the book, and this is from like the 90s, like early 90s, I think 1992, it's like 70% of men in prison grew up without a father. That's a lot, like 70%. So obviously there's some correlation. I don't know all the studies or why, but clearly dads not taking that responsibility, being involved in their children's lives, plays a massive negative impact in those kids' lives. Can people rise above it? Yes, but I think if anyone does any brief survey of any statistics on like kids from broken homes or kids with, drug addicts for parents and things like that, it's like what, less than 5% maybe make it out of that life. Maybe 10%.
Our next book will talk about that.
Yeah.
So our next podcast is going to be on behavioral psychology for children and how to be like, a good parent or a good father around that. And the book that we're going to be reading is Meg Meeker's Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And it talks about the absence of fathers and the detriment that it has caused. And this lady has been a pediatric psychologist for over 35 years. And she's seen people time and time again fail because of no fathers.
That's how you use that word, huh?
Yeah. To go back to your point, though, George, on warriors and kingship, like people that are great examples, Stu's two models in this book for both a warrior and a king was Christ and King David. I mean, one conquered death, the other one conquered the Goliath and, ran his kingdom, So I think those were such exemplary examples of both a warrior and a king.
Yeah.
I mean, they were perfectly balanced. They were authoritative, loving, empathetic, compassionate, visionaries. I mean, they did everything right. And obviously, if we anchor ourselves in the example of Christ, it's naturally going to be something that we'll learn to do as we strive towards him.
Yeah.
So I love that he used those two guys.
One last thing I just want to make really clear about this book too, before anyone comes after us, is there's 2 chapters dedicated to women and how men, you're not supposed to lord over them. It's a partnership. Marriage is a partnership. You are equal partners. You have separate roles, but that doesn't mean you're not, like, one is not lesser than the other. And I think that that's another lie that our society has been led to believe, that by having different roles or agreeing to different roles within your marriage or within your household inherently means that one is, lording over the other. That's just ludicrous. It's like I gave the example earlier with caring for our pets. I know nothing about it. Like I have that is my wife's role when it comes to like what food we feed them and what vet care we need to give them. Like she's the unequivocal, master of that arena of our life, right? There's other things where we both have a lot of knowledge about. So it's 50-50 on the roles. But then there's other things that like the money. She does not want to deal with it because she's not interested in it. She doesn't know a lot about it. It stresses her out, right? We kind of talked about that in one of our episodes already. And so we've found a balance in our marriage, but that doesn't make her lesser because she doesn't deal with the money and I do. Like it works for
team.
us, right? And so that's what I'm saying is that like these aren't. We're talking in generic terms here, but it's not like a one size fits all. Like for example, to Dustin's point, right? If your wife is a doctor or your wife is a wizard with money or something, probably should let them manage that part of your family's finances or whatever, right? You see what I'm saying? It's like
Right.
Yeah.
it's not an absolute here, but in general, like you should be. I think there's a tendency, and Dustin, you were bringing it up with earlier, is like men are just timid. Like men are afraid. The word responsibility is a dirty word today, and I don't know where that happened and how, but I was raised to believe or to accept responsibility for my actions, for my failures, to seek opportunities to have responsibility because that's just what you do, and that's how you become successful in life. Is if you're not responsible for anything, well, great, yeah, you don't have to worry about anything, but what are you doing with your life? What are you accomplishing? What are you, how are you improving the world around you? So I mean, we're really going off a rat hole here, but I think it's so sad to see how many men, like their dream job is to like not work, like, oh, I just want to smoke weed and play video games. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's great for
There's too many escapes.
well, it's great for a 15-year-old, right? But if you're a 30-year-old man who should be caring for family and friends or something, right? I'm not saying that this is a podcast for fathers, obviously, but I think as a man who's over mid-20s, right, there should be different expectations than, we kind of live in a world now, it's like, well, you make your own choices and, that's okay. And it's like, well, no, there should be some shame, I think, quite frankly. If you're not advancing your life or improving the lives of others around you in at least some small way, then what are you, like, you're just stealing oxygen at that point, quite frankly. I mean, what are you doing? You're taking up space and eating food, bluntly. And I think men, like, we crave more. We crave adventure. If your adventure is not climbing mountains and something else, that's fine, but like, go do it. Don't talk about it. Go do it. So I'll pause.
I think we apologize too much. Like you guys were like, oh, you shouldn't say what you just said. I don't even know what I said wrong. I'll be honest, because I'm done apologizing for the way that I feel and the opinions I have, because today's society doesn't let you have an opinion. We're allowed to have opinions. So like, I'm sorry, but we're in that phase right now. And I've said this before, hard times create strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. We're at the weak men create hard times. Let's be real. And that's why society has a generation of men who are absolutely pathetic. There's no other word for it. They are pathetic. You can't stand up for your responsibilities. You can't stand up for anything in life more than, hey, I'm going to go complacently into the darkness with a mediocre job, a mediocre life, and just play video games to my heart's content, or not have responsibilities, have zero ambition, and just live on cruise control. Well, that's our problem right now.
That's comfort.
Personally, to me.
Comfort.
Yeah, well,
comfort.
Right.
Comfort and mediocrity is where dreams and responsibility go to die. And a lot of that is self-deception. And one of the things that's in the actual physical book is he has a couple of pages called Let the Truth Hit Home. And it's when a man faces himself. So it's looking yourself in the mirror and taking about 30 minutes to sit down with a piece of paper and a pen. And you divide your life into major areas like your responsibility as a husband, as a father, your role in church, your job, your friends, all that stuff. And you have to be brutally honest with yourself and ask yourself, where do I need a wake-up call in that? Where do I need to work on it? And if you write there's going to be a place. Everybody has a weakness somewhere. And if you go in there and you figure out where you're weak at, and you slowly work on those, even if it's just a 1% change every day. I mean, man, 2-3 years down the road, you're going to be such a better person and a better father
Me
and
versus
husband.
me. Absolutely. Me versus me mentality.
Yeah.
And, there was no one better about that than Kobe Bryant. If you ever watch anything he ever talked about, he talks about it was always him versus himself. He didn't give a crap what Michael Jordan, LeBron James, anybody else is doing. And that's why he's one of the greatest of all time in what he did. And I think it goes back to the mentor thing. The third pillar being the mentor. You're a disciple, you're a mentor for the people who look up to you. And if we talk about strong men, look at the men that women want. They're the guys who step out of their comfort zones. They're the guys who are willing to do the things no one else is willing to do and learn. Because when you learn from your own mistakes and you learn from your own failures, you're willing to teach those failures and those strengths to other people. And I think that's another thing. People are so afraid to fail nowadays. I think Steve Harvey said it best. Failure is best because failure makes you your best. It's what teaches you, hey, pick yourself back up, be a tougher man, or a woman, whatever the case may be. Do better with yourself by being harder on yourself, make yourself uncomfortable, face your fears, do the things that make you genuinely like cringe, because those are the things that once you take yourself to that precipice and that ledge, you can come back and say, hey, I did that. I fixed these things. I did those things. I've had a lot of problems in my life, and I'm the cause for most of them. I'll be honest. But I took a step back. And George, you've had conversations with me, Dustin, of course, Brandon, obviously being my twin brother. But George saw me at some of my lowest points in my life. So did Dustin. And the first thing I questioned was not, the other person or the situation, it was myself, because I hold myself responsible ultimately. And I think that's what more men need. And I'm not saying I'm anything more of a man than anybody else. I'm definitely not. But I think men in general need to question themselves. They need to question their motives, and then they need to learn from their failures so that they can be better mentors. Because like George said, being a mentor is one of the greatest things that a father can be. Because at the end of the day, my father taught me that. He taught me that failing is the number one thing you can do. And listening to other super successful men say the same thing, or father, excuse me, not just men, has been so instrumental in just everything I've ever learned. And it's put me on a different path, because I was stuck in a career that I absolutely hated, working 12-hour shifts, 6 to 7 days a week or more, 100-hour weeks. And now I pushed myself, quit my job, took a risk, faced my fears, failed a bunch. And now I'm in the medical industry, and I absolutely adore what I do. And I didn't give up on it. Even when I had to take a step back, go back to that industry, I eventually got back where I needed to be. And I think, to go what George said, is, a man can literally go through anything as a father and know at the end of the day it's worth something because they're doing it for others. I think that's something that we can easily lose sight of. And I know I do sometimes. So just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. Dustin, you've been kind of listening and thinking. I know I got some prepped.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask you guys, what do you think was your entry into manhood? I feel like many successful cultures have an entry into manhood, right? You go on a vision quest, right? You take some drugs and you go shoot a bow at a deer, right? I mean, or whatever, but I don't think our culture has that. I didn't have an entry into manhood. I went to college, I got drunk, I got laid, I mean, like all things that we say, oh, that makes you a man. That doesn't make you a man. That's all BS, right? I mean, back in the day, you had to defeat your peers. You had to go live on a mountain for 3 days with no food or water. You had to do something that you are a man after you finish this. And there's no quest to manhood in our culture that at least I was a part of. So I'm curious if you guys had a point in your life that you would say, this is when I knew I was a man, or this was my my vision quest, my entry into manhood. Because I think that's super important.
I've got 2 things. So one, I'm going to give you a quote from the great theologian Ben Affleck. He said, it's a great quote, though. He said, but I forget the exact specifics of it, but basically came to the point is like, I used to think this made me a man. I used to think that made me a man. But I realized that I didn't become a man until I had children and started thinking of the world in terms other than myself. So pretty powerful. But the second, I'll ask a question to you actually, or for the group to maybe ponder is, why do you think our society doesn't have a ritual on manhood? It's almost like it's intentional.
That's deep, dude.
I mean, think about it. So if you're, I look at what's just going on in our society and all these things that I think is a huge part of what you were talking about earlier, Dustin, of how, less boys are graduating college or less, doing these desirable jobs and things like that. I think it's because, I mean, could you imagine being a young boy growing up in today's world? Like, what are you supposed to be? Like, I knew, for us, I feel like we were old enough. It's like, oh, you got to be an athlete, or you got to work hard. You got, it's like you got to tough it up. Stiff upper lip. And the things that maybe that we didn't have was maybe some of that tenderness, some of these other pillars. But when it came to going out and being a warrior, I don't think we were raised in a generation that that was like a foreign concept. But today, I think men are, or young boys even, are like, in a lot of areas in our country, they're torn apart for trying to be that. So if you're 7 and you get ridiculed for trying to be a great athlete or something like that, or go out and do something kind of dangerous, oh, that's dangerous, that's bad. Well, boys, that's what we do. We break bones, we do stupid stuff. That's how we learn, pain and repetition. And that's just, we're hardwired that way. And to say otherwise is just, you're just not seeing the big picture. But to me, it's like signs of like some sinister plot to confuse boys from a young age so they never can become a man. And whether it's intentional or not, I mean, the reality is, we don't have this. When do you know you become a man? Is it when you have sex? Is it your first beer? Is it is it having a kid? I don't even think having a kid makes you a man. Quite frankly, I've seen numerous people who have fathered children and run, and that you're not a man. That's what little boys do. They skin their knee and they run back to mommy. Right? I mean, so yeah, maybe we do need a ritual. I don't even know what that'd be in modern times, but at least then there's something like, hey, you know what? I'm a man now. I have to take responsibility, and society expects it of me. That's the other problem too, is we don't have shame. There's no shame in our culture anymore. It's ludicrous. Like even in the Army, when I was active duty, they made us turn around when people were doing their push-ups and stuff, so you couldn't see if they were doing them wrong. And I was like, why? That's insanity. If Private Snuffy or Captain so-and-so isn't doing good push-ups, the whole unit should know that he sucks at push-ups, because at the end of the day, our job depends on being physically fit to survive in combat. This isn't about your feelings. The bullets are blind. Bullets kill you whether you're blue, black, green, or orange. So if you suck at being physically fit, then quite frankly, you're a liability, and the whole unit should know about it, because then you'll feel the shame of knowing that you need to pick your weight up and get better. And that's like a dirty concept, even in the military today. Think about how insane that is. So back in
You're making me want to drop and give you 20 right now.
Yeah, but back in World
No.
But just contrast this with so in the 40s when World War II was starting and they were looking for volunteers for the airborne, the 101st Airborne and stuff, there were people who were literally committing suicide because they couldn't get into the airborne. They couldn't
going into programs and getting injected.
They killed themselves because they were so ashamed of not being able to make it.
That's insane, man.
And now compare that to men today. I'm not saying you should kill yourself. Absolutely not. That is not a healthy response to that situation. But just think about the mentality of that society versus today. And I'm not saying you should.
It comes back to what Hop said,
right.
the thing I just quoted. I mean, the strong men.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I was already rambling.
No, before I lose my train of thought, I think the moment I knew I was a man was nothing selfish, like, oh, I had this great achievement, or I did this, or I got laid, or none of that bullshit matters. I think for me personally, my father's my best friend. Brandon can tell you he's an incredible guy. I love my dad. I can't brag on him enough. But I think the day I knew I became a man was when not only did my father Christ teach me to live a certain way, when I caught myself doing something bad or said I should feel guilty for, and I did, and I felt horrible, and I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I stopped myself halfway through it. I'm not going to say what it was because it wasn't exactly legal, but I stopped and I was like, look, what the hell am I doing? my dad would be so disappointed in me right now. And it requires having a father. That's what we talk about on this podcast. Fortunately, I had a damn good one who went through a lot of shit in his life and stopped the cycle of hatred and abusiveness and all the crazy stuff he went through. And we'll tell that story another day from what my dad went through. But the man has a heart of gold. And the day that I knew I started inheriting that heart is the day I knew I was becoming a man. And the day that I knew I could come to my father and say, hey, this is what I did today. And he was proud. That meant more to me than getting laid by the hottest chick or doing the right thing in school or getting this graduate degree or whatever the case may be. And I feel like knowing that I'm following my father's footsteps and making him and my mother proud is something that probably sits the most well with me.
Yeah. So Dustin, I want to kick it back to you because I stole the reins from you there.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, you're good. Yeah, I mean, as far as, when I really thought that I was a man and, kind of had that moment, I was older. I think I went through kind of an extended adolescence in some sense, because college wasn't nihilistic for me, but I definitely didn't have a plan when I was going through it. It was a learning experience for me. It was a lot of growing, but I don't think that process should happen in college per se, and I don't necessarily think it should happen, in your late 20s, 30s. For a lot of men, that's too late.
Yeah.
Women's brain have been shown to be a lot more plastic. If a early 20s female is really struggling and isn't successful, women, not always, but tend to be better about accepting that and then bettering themselves later. I think more and more you see, I see some of my friends, who are now pushing 40, very successful, went to college and then saw their other friends be successful, but they didn't have that success. The recession of 2008 hit. There were a lot of, challenges with jobs, and they said, I'm just as smart as Dustin, but he's making money and I'm not. So the system's unfair. It's out to get me. I'm going to check out and go play video games and not have kids and not have any responsibilities and just go, have fun because the world isn't fair.
Yeah.
And I think some of those people may never, overcome that, right? I mean, if you don't hit that window at a young age, men really struggle to bounce back and continue to achieve. And so I honestly couldn't tell you what my moment where I said, oh, I'm a man and this is it, when it happened, because I don't necessarily, it was a slower process for me. There wasn't, a quest that got me there. And I don't know. There's no regrets in life, but it would have been cool to have a little bit more of that as a community, whether it's going into the military or, having a community that got you there. I don't know what other cultures did, but it took me a little bit longer to get there, to feel like I was a man than than other people did.
Actually, I have a great question for you, Dustin, since you grew up in a single mom home.
Yeah.
Is there a moment that you stopped and thought, damn, I think my mom would be proud of me? That you felt like you were a mature man, that you were a man, that made you feel like a man?
If I could think of a single moment where that happened, when I was able to take care of her and take her on vacation and pay for everything, and go to Mexico.
Awesome.
And buy all of her drinks, get a massage for her, get a nice 5-star room, and just say, you know what, I can do that for you, and it's no skin off my back. And that, I think, was a really special moment for me, where I said,
that's amazing.
I feel like I made my mom proud.
Yeah.
And the smile on her face was worth every penny. That was really cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm sure you watched that weight lifted off her too. Like, hey, I know you've taken care of me my whole life. It's time for me to take care of you a little bit. That's dope, dude. I like that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. That's always in the back of my mind, for sure.
Yeah, I think the best ritual that any man can have to become a man is to just relentlessly start to pursue it. Starting to pursue being a man. You're adolescent in a lot of your ways. You know that there's weaknesses and imperfections that you have. Start pursuing it. That should be the ritual. Like, I suck at this. Okay. Pray about it, read about it, study it, figure it out, say, this is my plan of attack. This is how I'm going to fix it. And you fix that. And then you say, okay, here's the rest of the list. What else can I start doing? And I think that should be the ritual for every man.
Yeah.
How can I be a better husband, a better father?
Initiation.
I think the ritual should be just starting that first step. And
Yeah.
that mentality, it's like when somebody has an addiction, the first step is knowing you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding and acquiring the knowledge to figure out where you have those problems and then start attacking it. And that goes back to the book, having a vision. You have to have a vision for yourself. You have to have a vision for your family, your friends. And I feel like one of the things he said was the measure of a man is the spiritual and emotional health of his family. And when you continuously check that health, you start finding out where it's not healthy and you start fixing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a true man really starts to shine, is when he takes responsibility for his crap and he starts doing it.
Yep. So Dustin, I was gonna kind of not echo, but maybe kind of expand upon what you were talking about of the extended adolescence, and you think you became a man later. I mean, I for me the same. If I'm honest, I think I joined the military because I was seeking validation for something that I never had. And so I think, I can say all the buzzwords of like, oh, I want to serve my country and all these kinds of things, but I don't think any of that made me a man. I don't even think going to war made me a man, quite frankly. I was in some ways a man, right? Because I did what I needed to do when I was there. But on the inside, I think I was still, I was just a hurt little boy who was looking for validation from other men, right? Just being very real, and then even having a kid, had a kid, got out of the military. We moved to Texas, and I mean, my marriage is on the verge of divorce numerous times, and I don't think I don't think I was really being a man through any of that. And it wasn't until I accepted responsibility for my flaws and what I was doing to hurt my wife and my marriage, and ultimately my daughter, and started to course correct, that I think if I can confidently say, like, I was a complete man that had self-awareness about my failings and my weaknesses, and accepting accountability from other more accomplished men, wiser men, and accepting their reproach on me. So I guess I was like 28, 29, and yeah. So I mean, I think you were kind of saying that earlier, like, oh, I didn't ever join the military or anything. I don't think that makes you a man. It makes you tougher in certain ways, but I think it makes you stunted in others too, right? I'd bring home at work. How can you not? And I treated my wife like she was one of my soldiers, not my spouse, and I came from a broken home too, really messy divorce. I was 16 when my parents split up. And I mean, I think a lot of that was me feeling the impacts of a broken home. And, I don't want to get into all the details, but my concept of who my dad was and who my mom was very skewed by a lot of, just stories being woven that weren't true. And so my dad and I reconnected about that same time when I think I really became a man in my late 20s, and, kind of just let the past be. And I think that's played a big role too in me being a lot more sure in myself. But, I'm just one example of how a broken home and a messy divorce can really, I mean, my grades just took a nosedive. Just every aspect of my life got worse for a while. Yeah. And, I was able to kind of pick up the pieces a little, but I think I was still a 16-year-old boy in a soldier's body doing soldier things until I was 27, 28, so just being very open and honest. But I think my story is probably more common than people would want to admit. And, I don't know how we fix that other than, I guess, be a good father and don't mess things up. So if I can, I would like to really get into the last point I had in the notes, and I think this is a good segue, and this is the staying power. So this is what I think is the outcome of having the 4 pillars, and it's endurance, it's perseverance. So staying power, the author says, is a man's greatest strength. Endurance, literally translated, means staying under. So it means remaining, persevering, holding fast, and standing firm. And we talked about this earlier. Today's real men are a vanishing breed. It's killing our culture. So 1/3 of American children are not living with their natural fathers. And this was in 1992. That's when that was. So I would venture to guess that that's probably a much higher number today.
Probably 2/3 now.
I don't know about that high, but I think at least close to 50%.
Close. Yeah.
And then we talked about how 70% of men in prison grew up without a father. So, quite frankly, people don't keep their word today. and the author says the bottom line is stay with it, man. So I want to just read real quick. Oh man, my Discord's screwed up again. Let me see if I can get that fixed. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're good.
Y'all, your screens are lagging, so unfortunately you're not going to see your beautiful faces until this fixes. But the quote, the line from the book is, "Stay with it, man. Stick by your commitments. Stand by your promises. Never let go, no matter what. When marriage isn't fun, stay in it. When parenting is over your head, stay at it. When work is crushing your spirit, don't let it beat you. When the local church is overwhelmed with pettiness, stay by it. When your children let you down, pick them up. When your wife goes through a 6-month mood swing, live with it. When it's 4th and 14 with no time on the clock, throw another pass. Understand that the heart of staying power is sacrifice." And I think that that's ultimately, sacrifice isn't valued anymore. And I think that that's a lot of how we get to where we are. So sacrifice is the opposite of being selfish, right? And we live in a culture today that values, oh, well, I want, or I should have, or me. And it's all just a lie. I think men, we're supposed to sacrifice for others, not all the time, right? But when it's your family, like, there should be no question. So let me just pause there, and I'm actually gonna try and fix Discord real quick while you guys are talking.
I'm gonna jump. Can I jump in, B, real quick?
Yeah. I'm just, whenever we get back to recording, I've got a great question.
Okay. Actually, let me pause this. Let me just leave Discord and join back in. So
To play off the sacrifice thing, I think that's one of the hardest things as a father, man. You sacrifice a lot. And sometimes it's unspoken sacrifices, man. Unspoken sacrifices that never get appreciated.
Well, and so that's
hard as
but see, that's the thing is I would add into, like, a man doesn't need. We talked about in this other book that's not even remotely religious, that I think I shared with you guys, right? The dad starting over thing or whatever. But it's like, are you a little boy that needs mommy's validation, or are you a man? Like, you do the right thing because it's just the right thing to do. You sacrifice for your kid because it's the right thing. Do you need like some outside approval? Are you just a scared little boy who needs mommy to tell you good job and give you a cookie? And I hate to be so blunt about it, but that's just the reality of the situation. I mean, you're gonna
I get that.
Yeah, you're gonna run into it when your son gets older, man. You're gonna come home from work and just be exhausted, and he's gonna be like, "Dad, I want to go do this."
There's a difference between validation and appreciation.
Sure. Well,
I'm talking about when you're in the thick of it, and every day is a freaking struggle, and you're fighting your demons, and everybody outside of your mental state has no clue what's going on internally, and all you want is just someone to say, "Hey, look, I see what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing." Like, that means more to a father than, a Ferrari or whatever the hell anyone could ever get you or purchase you. Like, just having someone, it's not validation, but just saying, "Hey, I appreciate that you make sacrifices for us every day." Like, if my wife, comes to me after a hard week, no matter if it's, issues with work or, life or anything, and she says, "Hey, I appreciate you," like, that to me that's gold.
Right. Well, and that, another reason I think that's why this podcast is valuable is because this is giving an example of what men should be doing more too, right? Because life is hard. We are expected to stay under, to persevere, to have staying power. Well, you're also not a machine, so you need other friends who can say, "I hear you, brother. I know that sucks. I'm with you." Like, to be that outlet, right? But I think that's the other lie that our society has fed us, that we've bought into as men, is, oh, well, if you're a man, you just gonna kind of grit your teeth and bear it, and that's not true either, right?
We need each other.
I can't think of any specific chapter in the book that talks about that, but I've got to believe that there's some in there, and I know this organization called Mighty Oaks that I've been to. They teach that as well, right? The whole concept is you need a company of men around you to help support you and everything. So that's how that helps recharge your staying power, right? Is other guys who know what it's like, they understand you, and they're gonna help support you. And so, like, that's why, when you're in your lowest lows and you call me up, like, yeah, man, I got nothing going on. Let me, whatever I did have going on, it's not that important, right? So let me hear you, and just like you said, validate hearing you and mirroring that back to you. But yeah, all this, I think the point is, but you have to take, like, even if I listen to you and I hear your problems and all that kind of stuff and try and encourage you, at the end of the day, you still have to be the one to do it. You have to initiate. You have to stay under that. That's not my cross to bear. It's your life. It's not mine. I have mine. I'm going to help you, but I can't do it all for you. And I think that's
Sure.
a clear distinction. But
Yeah, no, and you've always been there, at least for me personally. And I think that comes back to having like your own little wolf pack, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having the guys that are going to be there for the rest of your life that you trust. Like, for instance, with Dustin, like literally the first night we met, we're like, we're going to be best friends, aren't we? And
Did we
we're
just
like,
become
"Yep."
best friends?
And we
Yep.
sure did. And yeah, now he hates me and he
Yeah.
just pretends he likes me. Whatever, he sticks around. But no, all joking aside, like having good men around you, I think is huge. And it comes back to the military aspect. When you go to war, what do you want? You want men you can trust that have certain skills or who are going to be there to protect you. And I think we can learn a lot from the military, especially as fathers. You want someone who can protect you and who can step up and say the right things, but hold you accountable at the same time. And I think that's a valuable lesson we can learn from the military and the structure that they provide is, hey, we're not going to baby you, but we're going to tell you, hey, we appreciate what you do, well, at least for the most part. And we're going to, teach you the structure and the things that you need to know that you have guys around you who are family, who do love you and who are going to be there for you. So
I'd say with a word of caution. I mean, I think, quite frankly, if I would have read Tender Warrior before I entered the service, I think I would have been a lot better leader, just point blank, because I was I was two of the pillars, not all four.
Mm-hmm.
So
balance.
Yeah, that structure works, but I'd say take that with a grain of salt. I think it's maybe a starting point, but like your kids aren't soldiers. Your job with your kids isn't to go fight battles. It's to, I think I guess just be careful about like using that analogy or like using that as your only template, because I think there's a lot of things that you miss in that example potentially. So, but that's just
no, that's why I said just learn from it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying take that as the Bible, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we can learn a lot from the men around us, is my point, and take from that.
That was my main question: is what or who do you think is supports the staying power? And for me, one of the hardest things I ever had to do was let go or pull away from lifelong friends that I considered brothers that weren't good for me or for my life. Great example. One of my closest friends, I was thinking about and praying about having a second kid, and basically flat out told me I wasn't a good enough dad to my kid that I currently had, and that I wasn't ready for a second kid. So over time, that just kind of poisoned my soul and my self-esteem, and it made me doubt my capabilities as a father. But then, I just had to anchor myself in Christ and realize that God had called me for this purpose, or he wouldn't have ordained my children for me. And, I thought about what he said a long time. I challenged it to make sure that there weren't some things that he had truth to. But I realized a lot of it was just a different understanding of the world, different lifestyles. And he only saw a small fraction of my journey as a father.
Mm-hmm.
And had he seen the entire picture, I don't think he would have said that. But the point is that my growth skyrocketed when I was around the right people, because I was encouraged, I was loved, I was appreciated. And, I think a lot of it is who you surround yourself with. Are you surrounding yourself with somebody who doesn't care about being mediocre, who doesn't care about being comfortable, who's pessimistic, who's going to constantly, oh, you don't need to do that. That's a horrible idea, when you're actually passionate and excited about something. So I think if you weed that out, that helps hasten your growth.
Yeah.
So
I think
Oh,
I forget who told me this, and I forget the exact analogy, but it was something to the extent that like every man needs like 3 types of men in their life minimum, and you need an older man who challenges you, who mentors you, who coaches you, who holds you accountable when you're wrong. Hey, look, George, just I'm telling you right now, I know better because I've lived longer. Do it like this instead, right? Then you need friends who are of the same age, right? That, like you were saying, are like-minded, who will challenge you but also support you, but not detract from you either. And then you also need younger men that you are mentoring, and you're preparing the next generation. So I forget there was man, I forget who told it to me, and I forget they had a real sharp like example of like the 3. But if you can just kind of take that with you, I think look at your own life and think about, do you have that? Do you have at least one older guy in your life who knows better, who can teach? Maybe it's your dad. If it is, that's awesome. Maybe it's not your dad. That's good too. I mean, it can be a guy from church or from some association you're in or whatever. But I mean, I realize now why my internet's been struggling. We have storms outside. Just heard it, but it can be someone that you just know from somewhere. It doesn't have to be like some person, but I mean, you go to school to learn from a teacher who's like done it longer than you. It's why would you treat life any different? So, and then in the same way, right? We talked about the mentor pillar. It's our job to teach those behind us how to do this thing called life too. So it's not enough for you to collect all the knowledge yourself and then hoard it. You gotta pay it forward. So.
I'll say this real quick, Brandon. That's a good point. Having shitty people around you will bring you down. As a father, as a friend, as a brother. Those 2 guys, which I know who the two are that you're referring to, you're not going to ever say their names. I'm not going to say it either, just because 1, I don't want to get sued, and 2, I think I'm better than that. But they're pieces of shit, dude. They fall into that category of people who are in cruise control. Like I talked about earlier, they are not good for your soul. They're not good for your career. They're not good for anything in your life. So you are so much better without them. And I think you replaced them with 2 guys, the ones here on this cast that are willing to call you on your shit and push you and give you constructive criticisms, but yet be there for you when's needed. And I think that's, like George said, every man needs a group of guys that, we can all count on. And I think the biggest person that is a father. And like going back to one of the pillars, I know I struggle as a warrior. I can be a brute when I get defensive about things, whether it be my wife or my kid. If someone threatens them or if someone threatens my way of life, yeah, I'm a damn brute, and I'm working on it. But like you said, Brandon, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses is a big thing. And I know my weakness is the warrior aspect of things. But to go back to something, George being an actual warrior, I watched George come back from war. And I watched the changes that, when he left, and then the person he was when he came back, and the struggles he had. And dude, I gotta say, George, man, I'm damn proud of you, man. Especially sharing some of the stuff you shared. I know it was a struggle for you, and I know you had some demons, man. But as a father, I can say this: I've never not seen Raylan look at you and be like, that's a problem.
I appreciate
She's always
that.
looked at you like, that's my daddy, man. She's unconditionally loved you. And I think that comes back to being a good father is hiding your kids. This is my whole point. Hide your kids from your own demons, because you're going to have them as a father. And doing a good job of translating those demons and saying, hey, look, daddy has his problems, and being real with your kid and having a one-on-one when they're old enough, obviously, when they can understand, saying, hey, these are my weaknesses, learn from them, grow from them.
Yeah.
I think is a great lesson that I just kind of picked off of what you said. So
Appreciate that. I just want to clarify too, though. For me, my demons and my problems weren't actually from the military. It's like I said, I was that 16-year-old boy stuck in a growing man's body still. Emotionally, I was stuck at 16. So in reality, all my poor choices and my selfish desires and things that led me to doing a lot of stupid things over the course of my 20s had nothing to do with the Army. It had everything to do with
me never. I'm not saying it's just
right, but
I'm just saying. I think going through
I'm a little
I'm
sensitive on that topic, because I think we've also come. This is tangent for another day, but I think a lot of people bought into the fact that like, oh, you're in the military, you must be broken, and
No.
and that's just ludicrous because oh, you must have PTSD or whatever, right? And it's like, well, there's trauma in every aspect of life. It's not just like people in the like. Quite frankly, I think first responders see more trauma and deal with more challenging situations than any soldier. I'll keep my
Absolutely.
demons. I hear stories from first responders and stuff, and I'm just like, wow, that is intense.
State troopers too. I got a
Well,
buddy who's a
well,
state
I'm just
trooper in
saying,
New Mexico.
anyone in your local law enforcement, emergency and fire, like you're showing up and cleaning up crime scenes and stuff, or car accidents like that. You want to see trauma and violent images. That's like a day in and day out job. Anyway, so we're really getting on a tangent, but
Right.
the idea that trauma is unique to any one walk of life is just ludicrous. I mean, trauma can be emotional, it can be physical, it can be all these different aspects, and everyone has experienced trauma in one way or another. It can be the loss of a loved one. If you're young and a key person in your life dies, that's not necessarily trauma in the sense of like someone beat you up or something, but that may have been more damaging to you than any other type of life event you're going to walk through as a child. So I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff that can mess you up, and I think that that's where being a present father and helping your children through those challenges is where that can kind of stop some of those cycles. But I just wanted to pause real quick. I know it's getting late for Dustin especially. Do we want to pop into the questions that I prepared and go through those, or Dustin, do you need to maybe dip out now, or you got some more time?
No, we're good. Yeah, let's do some questions.
Okay, so let's go through the questions. I actually ripped them right out of the book, the section called "A Man Meets with His Friends." But I think it would be good for us to just go through these to kind of tie up the conversation about the 4 pillars of manhood, and then we can just keep kind of going on tangents as long as our heart desires. So the first question is, what figures defined manliness for you when you were growing up, and how did these authority figures define it? I guess I'll just start off. Like for me, it was always like, the Arnold Schwarzenegger action hero type. I mean, that was like, oh, big, strong man, shooting guns and stuff. And like, that's the world I grew up in, was like, that was manliness, right? And I guess that kind of, that was 2 pillars, right? That's the king and the warrior, but there was no mentor and friend in any of that, right? So maybe that plays into how I grew up. So anyone else?
I'd say Jesus for me. I know that sounds very cliche, but he's the ultimate friend. I mean, he was authoritative. He was the perfect king, the perfect warrior, perfect mentor. His parables were unbeatable. Nobody's ever beat the parables this man ever put out. And, he's always trying to connect with us no matter our flaws or our imperfections. He'll never disappoint us, let us down. And once we're connected with him, he's promised that he would never leave us nor forsake us. So he's always been my main. Now there's been others like Winston Churchill, Abraham Lincoln, people that have just had extreme hardship, that have persevered. And I feel like anybody that can do that has to have all 4 of those pillars running pretty balanced. Otherwise, they wouldn't have succeeded, where they did. Otherwise, they would have failed. So
yeah.
I had a lot of loss in my life, so I didn't always know Christ. I didn't feel the same way Brandon feels about certain things, and I struggled with my faith and some other things, but I don't anymore, obviously. But I'd say the one person that was constant was my grandfather and my father. I'll go back to that. My dad was, I'm so fortunate, man. Like, he had such a shitty life, and he's just such a good guy, man. Anytime I ever had a question, needed guidance, needed anything, my dad was there. So
I want to
and then
caveat. I want to
go ahead.
caveat my answer with my dad too. He was just always working hard. He never made excuses. So
That's it.
I'd be remiss.
They
I'd
were
be
what
remiss
men
to
should
not
be.
shout out to my dad.
No shame in that, man. But I'll say this, man, like, breaking a cycle is such a huge thing. And my dad did that, one. But 2, just even when he wasn't present, he was present. And that's such a hard thing to accomplish for men, especially today. And I just have to say, I absolutely appreciate the shit out of that, because I never questioned my father. And I know Brandon didn't either. If times got tough, my dad was literally always there for us. So just gratitude, man.
Awesome. All right, Dustin, what about you? What figures defined manliness for you while you were growing up?
My grandfather was definitely the one for me. He taught me how important intellectual curiosity is. He taught me to love learning. And he was just a constant, super important figure in my life. So he taught me to value your scientists, your Gregor Mendel's, your really powerful people in history that changed things and brought us these wonderful things that we have today. I think it's very easy to take the fact that we can have a podcast together visually for granted. This is like magic. I mean, can you imagine if our forefathers could have done this? I mean, they've got to be looking at us like, what's happening?
Could you imagine this in the 90s?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You're like, these guys are amazing.
I mean, you still had like tape cassettes in your cars in the 90s, so yeah. Like our kids will have no concept of like you couldn't just video conference with whoever you wanted to whenever you wanted to. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, we had dial up. You had to wait 5 minutes to get online, and then someone called, and you're like, no.
All right. Mom, are you on the phone? Stop! Get off the phone.
That's torture from our young days,
All right. Awesome. Okay, so next question, number 2. What is the problem with defining manhood by the opinions of contemporary experts? Dustin, why don't you take this one?
I think the challenge is that traditional manhood, as we describe it, goes against the present narrative of how society should be, right? I think the concept of strong men and strong leaders and all that completely goes against the current woke narrative and what is politically correct. And I don't know exactly when that happened or why, or when we took this bizarre 90-degree turn in that direction. But I know you guys are always consider yourself conservatives. I've always been a liberal. I've always voted for Democrats. I've always leaned that direction. And this new breed of authoritarian, anti-free speech mode of what has kind of taken over as what is politically correct has left myself, and I would argue most of traditional quote unquote progressive people. It's just this insane direction that we've gone, and I'm optimistic to think that it's gone so far to the left that sane people will rein it back in. We're already starting to see some positive directions where it should go, but I think the current narrative does not tolerate strong fathers and strong masculinity because it goes against everything that narrative wants.
Yeah.
I'm gonna correct something that Dustin said, since he likes to play the flip side. I would say I'm not really Republican. I'm more I'm fiscally conservative, yes, but I am more independent when it comes to being social. I have my beliefs, and I'm not going to put them out there, but I believe that people are free in this country, and they should always be free, no matter what that is. I don't give a shit who you date, who you vote for, whatever. I want to be able to have a conversation with you. You're an American. We should all start acting like Americans, first and foremost. Secondly, to answer your question, I think that temporary man, like, I think people struggle with power these days, and I think real men have power because they are the epitome of what a man should be today, if that makes sense. So I think that guys who are charismatic, who are intelligent, very well spoken, who, so to speak, have their shit together, and have ambition, are a threat to a lot of guys today. A lot of guys today, I hate to even say this, but I'm not gonna say it. All right, they're pansies. Let me just put it that way. A lot of guys today are threatened by men who have vision.
Mhm.
That's the easiest way to put it. And it's sad. Everybody should create their own vision and help build each other up. And I think that one of the most impressive things that I've heard from probably the smartest and most successful man I've ever met, and he's worth not 7 but 8 digits, personally told me the best thing you can do in life is, one, be successful for the people you love, but two, carry someone along the way. And I think a lot of people don't do that anymore. And I think as men, we need to do that. We need to carry others with us, and whether it be success, family, whatever the case may be. But spiritually, I know Brandon has carried me spiritually. I've struggled a lot, and it's something I don't say much, but I'll say it publicly. Brandon helped me with Christ quite a bit, as well as my Uncle Jerry. So I have to say thank you for that. But you know, I think that's, to my side of things, I think that's my answer.
All right, Pastor Brandon, to you.
No, so I think the issue with contemporary ideology, the heart of it is just it's a perverted theology, and theology is
Yep.
like the foundation of all science. So I think, for me personally, I don't pay attention to the contemporary viewpoints because there's so much perversion from the world, from society as a whole, that a lot of it it poisons the well. Like, if you have one drop of cyanide in a whole bottle of water, you're not going to drink that water. I mean, it's going to kill you. And so I feel like the theology, or the lack thereof in society right now, has
George
just
drinks
completely
water as you
poisoned.
say that.
Yeah, it completely poisons
Yeah.
the whole thing. And so for me, I go with a more biblical based approach, and some people aren't okay with that, and that's fine. But he knew what works. And
Yeah.
every time I tried to test things to see if I could do something that I wanted to do instead of what God wanted me to do, I learned a hard lesson usually.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't listen to a lot of the contemporary stuff solely because the theology isn't sound and because it's skewed and perverted. That's what Satan wants.
Yep. I would just say succinctly that the problem with defining manhood with the opinions of contemporary experts is that it's all this kind of make your own morality. And in the words of the great Aaron Tippin, you got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. If you don't know that song, you got to look that one up. But yeah, I mean, it's just straight up, if you are a true man, you have a vision, you're confident in what you know is right, and you'll stand up for what you're right. We talked about earlier. You'll stand up for your principles. You'll die for them if necessary. That concept is just so foreign in today's society. That's the problem, is if you try and define a man by their contemporary terms, you'll just go whatever way the wind blows, So
yeah.
Damn, I think that was the best answer of all of us.
Number 3, what is the advantage of defining manhood by biblical standards? Brandon, why don't you go ahead and just take this one?
Brandon leads this for sure.
Repeat that one more time so I can think on
what is the advantage of defining manhood by biblical standards?
Oh man, you can have a field day with that.
I mean, I
think it very clearly describes what men must develop. Like men, a good example, men must thoroughly develop manly love, and Stu talks about this a lot. And he said, in a word, it was headship, and that it's leadership with an emphasis of responsibility, duty, sacrifice, like we had mentioned before. And like you said, it's not rank or dominion with the brute or domination. It's no I'm the boss assertions kind of thing. So, and by the way, people who have to insist that they're the leader usually aren't. At least they're not the good ones. But yeah, I think a lot of it just boils down to, if you actually follow biblical sound doctrine, it's sound in the fact that God knew exactly what He wanted from both man and woman, from each gender's abilities and roles, and I think He made them good and perfectly. So I just trust like everything that I've ever done in my life where I've trusted him, it's only been good. It's only been a blessing. So for me personally, that it's a no-brainer that I would always follow what's suggested. When I don't, and I go astray in anything, I try to repent and pray about it. And I usually learn, like I said, I learn the hard way. So
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm actually about to say this, but I think I'm going to answer a biblical question better than Brandon. That being said, we had literally the perfect man walk this planet. Literally. He's the only perfect man who's ever walked this planet, and he was our guidance through all of this. And so following him and who he is as a man should be anything every man should strive for. Like, that's it. There's no other man we should strive to be but him.
Yeah.
That's it.
I was just going to
get any more
say,
simple than that.
yeah, I was
You
just
know?
going to say it gives us the blueprint, right?
Yeah. I mean, he is the blueprint and the alpha, the omega, the whole 9 yards, you know, like he literally is everything. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Dustin, I don't know if you want to add anything to number.
Yeah, I think I'm certainly guilty of always wanting the newest, hottest thing and saying, oh, you know, there's this new idea and that must be better than the old idea because it's new. But we've got a classic blueprint, you know, with a lot of the direction we should go. And so, you know, looking to always change the label and come to these new ideas and all that is sometimes just rewriting, you know, a book that doesn't need to be rewritten. Right. I mean, the answers are there. Sometimes it's okay to take the answer that's worked.
Yeah. Some things are universal. Not everything is changing. Yeah. Okay. Number 4. I know I'm trying to go quick because I know it's getting late for you. Number 4 is, in what concrete ways do you live out your role as king? Any takers?
Who wants to take it? I'll take it.
Okay.
Screw it. As king, my wife, as everyone knows, is Cajun. Cajuns are very independent, very stubborn, very strong-willed. But the one thing I will say is that she lets me play my role as king. I say let's, but you know, at the end of the day, I am the king of our household because she knows and respects that I'm always going to put her first. I think that's something that is forgotten in this day and age. A lot of guys are very selfish. I think living for someone else is a beautiful thing, and I live for my wife and my kid. And I think that putting my wife before my own needs, which is something I learned through trials and tribulations, which you guys know of. I'm not going to speak too deeply on that, but long story short, I've learned a lot of my own downfalls, and I don't let them play over until my marriage. So
I guess I'll go next if we're going around the horn.
Yeah,
I mean, just reminding that it's provisionary heart. You know, I think I've always kind of just, this comes naturally to me, you know, work hard, provide for my family, look ahead, avoid obstacles. You know, so I would say in my marriage with my wife, you know, she's a high anxiety individual. You know, she's the canary in the mine. She senses the danger before I do, but I'm kind of the one who helps be the grounding, you know, reassurance and stuff, and just keep it, you know, hey, we get to stay the course. This is going to work out for us because I'm watching ahead. So for me, that just kind of comes natural. I haven't really had to like work too hard on that one. Dustin?
I like to think that my marriage is an equal partnership, 50% king, 50% queen, and that works really well for me. My wife is a very strong person. If she had her way, it would be 120% her, negative 20% me. So I'm a strong person.
And she is very physically strong too.
She is.
She can whoop your ass.
When we resolve marital arguments, we do it physically. We play King of the Mountain and we wrestle. And I win at least 10% of the time. And those are such good wins. It feels like she cheats. She pinches.
60% of the time. No.
Right. It's awesome. Exactly.
Go to sleep.
So I think early in our marriage, it definitely leaned more towards 20% of the leadership was mine, 80% was Kim's. And I thought that was okay. I said, I'm a feminist. You know, I want to allow her to take that role because this works great. And then we've realized over the 8 years we've been married that it doesn't work that well, and that allowing, one partner in that situation to make most of the decisions and go that direction wasn't working for us. And now that I make a lot more of the decisions, I'm a much more important part of the leadership role. And, I am the one making the plans and talking about, kind of the direction I want to go over 5 years, 10 years. We're much happier. Things work a lot better. And I think Kim didn't realize it, but she was, kind of craving some of that leadership from me, and I wasn't giving it to her.
Yep.
And so now that I'm able to do that, we're both much, much happier.
It's almost like
That's
she's
a
wired.
great
It's
topic.
almost like she's wired for that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Right? Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Go figure.
George and I have had this exact conversation.
Well, and just to be
this
clear,
we
like,
should cover one day.
I mean, I bet it, I went and tallied all the roles and responsibilities between my wife. It's probably 50-50 or pretty dang close to it. So it's not like I'm not saying like I'm like the chief and it's whatever I say goes. That's absolutely not the case. But we have things that I'm good at and she's good at, and we like you were saying, right? We used to butt heads on all kinds of things, Dustin. I think that's just marriage. Learning to live with another human being is just a challenging thing, but we've kind of come into a comfortable area. Yeah,
I really want to bring this up, dude. After you've had this conversation with me multiple times, you discussed a book. I can't remember the name of the author, but there's a psychology behind women. Yes, that they want to be led by strong men who they love, trust, and respect.
I think it's Wild at Heart.
I think that's what
Wild
it was.
at Heart,
I can't remember. But women are literally, as you said, wired or psychologically, they want a man to take control.
Well, they want
what I mean?
No, it's not. So just
not
to be clear,
in a sexist way. I'm just saying
it's not to take control, but it's they want their knight to take them on adventures as an equal partner. Right, and so
that's what I mean. I'm sorry, I can't word it the proper way. I haven't read the book.
He talks about in this book too that's the end goal, right? Is you're going through life together. You're going to have challenges. You're also going to have great joys. But the whole point is that it's an equal partnership between the man and the woman on this adventure together, and that's they're your partner in crime, right? They're your do or die together. So that's kind of the message. It's not it's not a tyrant. It's not a dominion role, but okay.
No, yeah. And I meant attractiveness.
Yeah.
We've had this conversation.
Right. Well, and that's
women are more attracted to men who like to take charge and who like to have ambitions and things like that.
I mean, it's on the front of the book. It says every woman's dream, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the
yeah, exactly. That's my point. Just kind of going back to what Stu said there.
All right, Brandon, king. How do you live it up?
Yeah. So concrete ways that I live out the role as a king. So one of the things that me and Summer do is we sit down and we have, a weekly plan, kind of like you would with a business. You have a year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and a 20-year plan. And I get all of her intuition, because a woman's intuition, let's just be real, it's even biblically speaking it is very sound. And so I trust my wife's intuition. I get all of her thoughts, her ideas, her opinions on things. And then ultimately, as the leader, I have to make the decision for the family. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that also curtails is that I shoulder the burden of consequence, whether it's good or bad. And so as the leader, I take and own the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. So if something happens that's bad, it's not her fault. It's not her burden. It's mine because I'm the leader. And so, but going back to the plans, we have a 5 and a 10-year plan. And, we work on these things and we set a goal because you can't hit a target if you don't have one.
Yeah, true.
And so one of the things I do is I'm as a visionary, is I look ahead and I try to figure out ways to watch over my children and my wife and how to take care of things supporting my wife's dreams, her ambitions. One of the things she wants is a beautiful home with a wraparound porch. She's always wanted a wraparound porch. And so we have found the house plans, and we have a 5 to 10-year plan to buy that house and build it the way we want it. And I am so excited to make her dream come true. We started with rubbing pennies together. Now it's we're in a position because of our planning and because of my decisions where we can do that. And so I think that's one of the ways that I have kingship.
Oh, some.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is, in what concrete ways do you live out your role as warrior? Take a volunteer.
I kind of struggle with warrior. I guess I'll go into it. Whatever. Um,
What concrete
I
ways
guess
do you do it right?
the way I do it right is for the right reasons, I would say. I always try to interject myself in things, and sometimes negatively, but I would say positively most of the time, just because I'm always going to try and, you know, especially like in the future, speaking for my son, um, I guess investing in like the self-discipline, that's something that I'm always going to try to do. I know that was something that Stu talked about. Um, I will always defend and shield my family, and I'm always going to stand between them and, whatever the threat may be, whether it be, mental, physical, whatever. And I'm the protective heart thing that kind of spoke to me more than anything. I do have a very protective heart. I just need to learn to channel it better, I guess, is my downfall. And not be such a brute about it, because I do get, I'll be the first to admit I get egotistical about things. Sometimes I get prideful, and pride comes before the fall. So just possessing the higher moral standards that he talks about, and having high principles for myself and for my family, I think is probably the most important to me as far as that goes. And the most concrete thing about it that I would say I'm good at is I always have high moral standards for sure, and I'm always going to shield and stand between and defend my family. But like I said, I just need to work on the brute aspect a little bit of it.
No one's perfect.
Yeah,
No.
I think for me, a good example is I defend my marriage very carefully. Like Dustin had said in a previous podcast that he doesn't have platonic friends of the opposite sex. I think that's a brilliant thing, and that's one of the things I stand by as well. Is that I have to be
Temptation is real.
100%.
Yes.
Not a good
yeah
idea.
100%.
I
Let's be real
protect
as
my
men.
marriage. I have to be very safe and careful, especially in the world of social media and all the crazy anonymous abilities that people have. And so, I just really try to defend our marriage, and then I defend my children's hearts and their innocence. Ways that I do that is when I see them struggling socially, I am actually present when they play with other kids. And if they're struggling, I interject, I lighten the mood, I do certain things, I teach them how to be better socially. Bayla has no issues with that at all because, she's like my wife and doesn't know a stranger in the world. But my son's more like me, and, he's more of an introvert when it comes to that kind of thing. So I protect him there.
Doesn't
But
know
the
his
other
strength.
things that I do is just a constant high aggressive pursuit of self-help learning to make myself better, and a constant aggressive approach towards just learning in general, trying to learn everything I can. I don't replace things. If they're broken, I fix them. I always look and try to master things. I want to be a jack of all trades. That the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none, but the whole thing is still better than being a master of one. And so for me, I'm trying to be a jack of every trade that I can, because I feel like it's just going to help protect and further my family.
It's good. Dustin?
I mean, something simple that I respect about all of you guys. You're all healthy guys. You take good care of yourselves, and part of being a warrior is you've got to be, healthy enough to. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're, eating garbage all the time, don't exercise, and you can't even, walk a mile. How are you going to be a warrior? You can't defend your family when you can't even, run away from a guy with a knife
Yeah.
or something, right? So, taking care of my physical health, my emotional health, my mental health, and allowing, myself to be able to be that protector for my family is really key. And I know the three of you do the same thing as well, and that's awesome. That's a super important thing.
Couldn't agree more, brother. For me, the warrior role, the one I've actually been playing a lot of concrete things in being the protector, is really paying attention to what my kid is watching or hearing on TV, social media, those types of things. I think
That's strong.
so. I just wanted to highlight, because it's so easy for us to, as men, think, oh, warrior, physical fitness, toughness. I'm gonna pick up my shield and block the arrows, but the enemy's smart. The enemy wants to tear our kids down through subversive methods. And
TikTok.
yeah, TikTok. Yeah, no, you're talking about
Sorry.
that dopamine hit in TikTok. I mean, it's essentially a legal form of drug addiction, if you think about it. And man, I've looked at some of these new shows that have come out on Disney. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. Like that it's a quote kids show. I'm just like, there's no 7-year-old in the world needs to be talking about this topic. Point blank. So like, I mean, I've just gone really into hypervigilance mode on what is she watching, what does she have access to, because I feel like there's just people out there right now who are just sick and they're just trying to sneak stuff in left and right. And I mean, that's just so, it's so subversive and so wrong. Like that stuff should be a parent's choice on when they talk to their kids about certain topics. So I've just been very vigilant on that one. So next one is, in what concrete ways do you live out your role as mentor? So Dustin, why don't we go back? We'll go back around this way.
I'll take that one. One of my greatest experiences in life before I had my son, I did Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Awesome.
And spending time with Jack, he was 9 at the time, he's 14 now, was incredibly valuable for me, and it was valuable for him. Being a mentor to him was incredible, on so many levels. And I'm so glad I got to do that. And I would encourage anyone, to be a part of that organization. And something where men struggle, the list is a mile long of boys who need a mentor, who are in single parent homes, that kind of thing. It's the opposite with girls. If you're a woman who wants to mentor a girl with big sisters, you got to wait a year to find a girl who needs it, because there are so many women out there willing to be mentors to girls. Opposite for boys. If you want to go mentor a boy, you can go get one. You can get 5 right now, because the list is a mile long of boys who need help. And I don't know what, and I'm being cynical and pessimistic today, and I apologize for that, but I don't know what happened to mentorship among men. I almost think it's like a fear of pedophilia thing, right? Like adult men are so afraid to be seen as like, this is weird that I want to hang out with a boy, right?
Yeah.
So they really, whereas we don't tend to think of that from women. So there just aren't very many men willing to go and volunteer an hour of their time a week, to go help out an underprivileged kid. And I'll tell you what, it was the best thing I ever did, and I'm really glad I got to do it. It was amazing to be a mentor.
That's awesome. I just love that example. So good. I guess I'll go next. For me in my life currently, where I play the mentor role the most, it's probably with my lieutenants in the Guard. I think I have a lot to teach them and offer them from my experiences on active duty and learning from the great guys that I worked with. I have a lot to teach in that arena that they don't really have access to. So I really take that seriously every minute I'm there in training with them, to try and teach them the right way to care for their soldiers and to lead them. And then another way that it's not nearly as noble as what you were talking about, Dustin, but similar, is there's a platform called Veterati, where veterans who are contemplating getting out of the military can, not veterans, service people who are still in the military can reach out to get advice on like getting out and careers and all that kind of stuff. And I've had a lot of people call me over the last couple of years to just take an hour phone call and just talk about whatever they need. And my transition out of the military into the corporate world was pretty rough. Just joined a company that was immediately going through a merger. And so it was like, Office Space, what is it you say you do here? So for me to be able to kind of pay it forward a little bit and ease their transition is rewarding for me. And I think I've helped people out a pretty good amount. So similar kind of thing there. It's just like, I've been through it, so it's nice to kind of pay it forward and help them out. But, pass those lessons learned.
Sure. I think for me personally, there's a word that comes to mind when it comes to competition, comes to sports, it comes to a lot of things in life. Heart. Teaching heart. That's one of the things that Stu talks about, a teaching heart. And I took that literally. I think that more men need to teach heart. When you give something, give it your all. Give it passion, give it love, give it your entire heart. Because doesn't matter how strong or how smart you are. If someone out hearts you, most of the time they're going to win. And
Yeah.
that comes into sports, that comes into a lot of things. But if your heart's in the right place and you set it to be just dialed to whatever it is you have as an ambition, let's say, so to speak, you're always going to smoke your competition because your heart enjoys the journey, doesn't enjoy the destination. When you, I guess for me, teaching is something that comes naturally. I like to lead, kind of like you do, George, as you know. But it's one of the goals I have with the medical industry. I want to be uh, a territory manager and not just a sales rep, which I'm not there yet, obviously, but I'll be there eventually, hopefully. And I think that teaching the heart is something that is missing from society today. Nobody has heart in anything anymore. They're selfish, or they have their other ambitious things because, oh, I'm going to make this much money. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Going back to what I just said, like if you play off of the journey and not the destination, you're going to hit goal after goal after goal because you're enjoying the journey. You're not paying attention. You have goals, but you're not worried about them because you're enjoying the entire step by step process. Whereas if you're worried only about the journey or the destination, you're going to miss the whole journey and you're not going to hit your goals and you're not going to do the things that you can do if you try to enjoy every step of it and have a true passion. So I think that's something that's missing from today's society that I would like to teach, which is passion and heart. So
Good deal. Brandon, what are you doing concrete role as mentor?
So, I kind of spoke on it in the warrior section, but it ties in really well into the mentor braid as well. Is knowing things, learning things constantly, just about life in general, like plumbing and yard work and fixing things, and I
great
mean,
skills.
just yeah, everything under the sun. I mean, the more you know knowledge-wise, the more you can model and teach and instruct your children, and help your wife around the house. And half the time they think it's sexy too, so there's a bonus there. But another really, really, really important thing is I've learned where I was weak the most, which was leading my family spiritually. I wouldn't go to church as much, and my wife was honestly the spiritual leader for a couple of years there, and I finally stepped up and realized that that was my role, and so I make sure that my kids and my wife are at church every week, and I make sure that my kids know that they have a hope outside of us, in God. Because when my wife and I are not around, my kids need hope other than us, and God is the absolute hope. It's He's the one person that can make them have peace and make them feel safe and make them feel bold and courageous and brave. And so, for me, I think the most important thing is the spiritual heart and modeling and teaching that to my.
Last concrete question is, in what concrete ways do you live out your role as friend? Who wants to take that one?
Ooh.
And so, just to remind everyone, the pillar friend is defined as the loving heart, passionate but more so compassionate. I will be with you, a commitment maker, a promise keeper.
I think that one for me is the one that comes most naturally, just because a man's nothing without his word. And so for me, character and keeping your promises, I keep every single promises to my children. And if there's ever an instance where I can't, I make sure to make up for it and I apologize to them directly. And then as far as commitment maker, I feel like that's something I prove over time to my children with my wife. Summer and I have been together through high school, through college, through all the stuff, a couple decades. And, when I commit to something, I see it through 100%. And in this case, I promised my wife until death. So that's something that's super important. I think other dads need to realize that is just like, when you accept Christ, it's something that you really have to think about what you're committing yourself to before you do it, because it's something that's forever, and it's something that's going to take sacrifice. And for me personally, man, oh there's a lot of examples. I don't want to kill our time too much, but for me, commitment just really boils down to every single day I show up, no matter how I feel. When I walk through that door, no matter how my job was, I'm always committed to coming home and being the best dad and the best husband, regardless of how I feel, because what happens before then's not their fault, So I think those are just a couple really good examples of being a friend, at least in your family environment.
All right.
Yeah, I want to jump right into this. I'm sorry while I get my thoughts together on this. I think it's what the world needs, man. It's a friend. You know how many people can stop and tell you how much the world has something of, but not that it's missing? I think the world's missing love, man. And I don't mean to sound like a hippie or crazy or anything, but like the world needs more love. We need more loving hearts. We need to love each other. We need to be friends with each other. And I think that's something that our current society is so missing. And I'm not even going to say family or our kids, because we can teach our kids love. We can teach our kids to be friends. That's super easy. I think teaching our society and like Dustin, go back to what Dustin said, us men stepping up and finding young children or boys to guide and show a loving heart and be willing to be a friend. I think that's what they need, man. Like the world needs more people that are willing to have friendships, excuse me, and have a loving heart. And I think that's what I got with Stu on this. He said, I will be with you. That speaks volumes. You can be the most broken, ass backwards person, but if you're loyal and loving towards somebody, they're going to appreciate you no matter what. And I think that's one of the few things that we can mark as something that we don't have a lot of in our society is love. I think being able to, Dustin goes back to politics, hugging each other and talking and like literally loving each other no matter what we personally think is such a huge thing. But, unfortunately, we have the media propaganda pushing the machine against us and making us hate each other for stupid reasons. And I think we need to go back to the most simplest of things, which is love, for sure. That's a commitment you can make to someone else too, is loving someone. I mean, let's be real. Love is a commitment, especially
It is.
especially in marriage, because that shit ain't easy.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? It's not always easy. It's not rainbows and butterflies like everyone talks about. Love in marriage, let's go into that real quick. Marriage is a lifelong thing that is extremely hard. My brother has been a great example of that. Not that his has been hard. I'm just saying that he's been married for 22 years or together
12.
for 22 years. That's a long time to be with somebody. That's a commitment. You want to talk about commitment? You could commit to a job for 5 years and move on. And someone's like, okay, pat on the back, good job. But a marriage of 60 years, that's freaking unheard of these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a little food for thought.
Concrete things I do as friend, similar to Brandon, just like keeping my word to my daughter. If I say I'm going to play with her, we go do it, no matter how tired I am, that kind of thing. Tonight she wanted to shoot the Nerf guns. I really didn't want to go do it, but just that's the sacrifice, right? I wanted to just sit there and relax, but no. So just like things like that, small things. I think with your kids is humongous because especially when they're younger, that's how they're how they will view authority the rest of their life is going to be dependent upon your ability to keep your word to them. If they can't ever trust figures of authority to follow through on their promise to them, then how are they going to trust anyone later on? So, and then the other is just with my wife, to our marriage, but also just to the day in and day out, the basic commitments. If she asks me to do something, following through on it and that kind of thing. So I think those are the most impactful ways that I play that role in my life. Dustin?
I think all four of us are incredibly blessed, incredibly privileged people. We have so much that's been given to us. And so I feel that it's my duty to give back some of that to people who I know are less fortunate. So I work with a lot of patients, who are really struggling in a really tough place. A lot of my coworkers are lonely, don't have a lot of friends, and so I know I'm a pretty empathic person, and I know that I might be the only person who might make someone smile or might have something nice to say to someone. So I go out of my way when I see someone I know who's having a rough day and needs that, to be that one person who gave them that positive interaction and reminded them that work's not so bad. There's some good
Yeah.
people out there that, yeah, I'm in pain right now. The surgery sucks, but these people are here for me. And that makes me feel so good. I almost feel like I get more out of that than they do. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful.
100%.
That's key to friendship for me, is to be a friend to people who don't have friends, who need
Yeah.
it.
That's such a good point you bring up too, because that's what he said in the
Yeah.
book from I think it was the psychologist he's quoting. It says the energy that connects men to others and to the world. And that ties into the initiative thing right there. Like, it's on us to be the one to, because no one wants to. It's like, oh man, I really, I just want to kind of put my head down and get through my work day. But no, it's like, if you see someone's having a rough day, like that,
Yeah.
what you're saying right there that's true manly friendship and love, right? That you're initiating and impacting that person's day in a positive way, when no one else would. So I think that's
I
very
have to.
powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to quote Doctor Who on this and nerd out. I think the phrase that stuck with me the most from that entire series of 50 plus years of running was, "If you don't see good in the world, be it."
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's a super strong thing
It's true.
to be. Like, be there.
Yeah.
That's all someone needs. Sometimes someone doesn't need you to say a single word. They just need you to listen. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's something as I've gotten older too. I've become better at that, and especially it's easy to be nice to someone when it's like you're already friends or whatever. But I think the example Dustin you gave, where it's just kind of in passing, I think that's the ultimate test of, do you have the pillar of friend slash lover? Is you're able to treat anyone that way, basically anytime, and So I guess the segues great into the next question is, which of the four main roles is easiest for you, and which is the most difficult, and why? I guess I'll just go real quick on that. So I think easiest for me is I'm gonna say the warrior role probably is easiest for me. I think the most difficult one for me is actually the friend role, or the friend pillar, because like what you were just talking about, Dustin, I've always kind of been the guy I wasn't always the good Samaritan, even though I know better, right? It's like, oh, well, it's not my problem. So as I've aged and become more wise, I've come to see those opportunities more for what they really are, and that's authentic manhood right there, is to, reach out and I guess I'll pat myself on the back. Just recently, I won't go into a lot of details, but it was a small little gesture, but I was able to kind of give someone just a break when I could tell they needed it. And I don't think a couple of years ago even I would have had the awareness or the compassion to really do that. I would have kind of just like, oh, that sucks, man. So how caring would that be? So that's always been the most difficult one for me, and I think that thankfully I'm able to kind of improve upon that one. So who else? Which role is easiest and
Guess
which
I'll
is
go.
hardest?
Yeah, I go next. Friend.
Easiest for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely easiest for me. I never meet a stranger, obviously. Uh, talk a lot. Sorry, guilty as charged, but I'm great at introducing the right people. I'm also great at trying to just give my life story so that someone feels comfortable enough to tell me theirs. I always try to be empathetic. Um, and I wish people could see through the eyes of others a little more. I think the world needs that as well. And our kids need that. They need us to see and understand and be empathetic. Empathy is such a big word that doesn't get thrown around anymore. And that's just because people perceive it as weak, but I think it's such a strong skill to have. I see things and I notice things, and I know that sometimes, um, not everyone sees those things. And I learned that from others, from friends in return. I learned them from, the people that I love and that I care about who taught me along the way. So I think friends is probably the strength for me, but it's also one of the strengths that a lot of people should have or get to know.
All right. So what's hardest for you?
I go back to warrior. I'm a little aggressive sometimes.
Okay.
I don't like people treading on certain things and saying things or doing things, and I'll let someone know. I got trampled in, I don't know, about 50% of my life, and then I took a stand one day, and then I got like physically bigger than most people, and I was like, all right, it's time to start pushing back. And then I kind of got asshole-ish, and I gotta kind of reel that in sometimes. So
Understood. Brandon, Dustin, which one he wants to go next?
Dustin, you go ahead, bud.
Okay, great. I think I definitely struggle with the king role the most. I really chafe under the bonds of authority. I hate being told what to do, and I recognize that in other people as well. And so I struggle to say, well, I should tell you what to do because I would hate to be told what to do, right? And so as I've gotten older, I've learned that it's okay to take a leadership role because all four of us are in a position to be strong leaders. And it would be wrong of us not to give that to people, right? Because it's such an important, pillar. I mean, we are having a crisis of leadership, and it's because men like us are not stepping up to the plate to provide that leadership. And I was one of those men.
Sure.
And so it's very important for my family, for my community, for me to be a leader. And if I don't, that's a loss for my community. And so I have to remember that it's okay when you know what's right to do to tell people to do it. And if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I'd have said, no, that's wrong. Let people do what they want to do.
Right.
I definitely really struggle with that for sure. As far as where I'm strongest, I've always been a great mentor. I was a personal trainer for 10 years. I was able to lead people to major life change, and I love mentoring. So that's always been a strength that I've cultivated.
Awesome.
Godzilla.
I want to cut in real quick and not to go back all military stuff, but I'm not a non-commissioned officer. I've never been one, but they have a creed called the Creed of the NCO, and there's a line in it that says soldiers are entitled to outstanding leadership. I will provide that leadership. And I love that line so much, man. Like, it's such a great that's probably the most powerful line in their whole creed, but I mean, you can apply it to so many things. And like you were talking about, right? Like, if you have the means and the know-how, you should provide it. And again, it's not tyranny. You're not stepping in and being like, oh, I'm the boss. It's out of compassion for, like, hey, look, this is how it's going to work out best for us all. So
Sure.
Glad you kind of highlighted that.
I'm gonna give Dustin some credit, man. Strongest guy I've ever met. You look at him, besides, my dad, because he's a freaking workoutaholic. But Dustin put 12 45-pound plates on a sled on carpet, put me, who I'm 200 pounds, and another 200-pound guy on it, and pulled us half mile one way on carpet and a half mile back. Needless to say, the dude's a freaking animal. He's a monster. But I have to say, man, like, you say you struggle as a king. I think I would follow you in a heartbeat because you have the empathy and you have those other things that you are strong in that you think don't add to that king. But I think if we're being real about this is my point. If we're being real about what Stu is trying to teach us, the other pillars lift one of the weakness or the weakest one up. That balance also comes from taking your weakness and lifting it up through your strengths. If you were king of, America or whatever, I would 100% follow you because I know who you are. I trust who you are, your friendship, your ability to mentor, all the other pillars. I think that a lot of people don't think about those factors when they hear these things. They think about one individually. Mm-hmm. Whereas you should think of them all together, use the weakest one, and allow the strengths to lift them up.
Just awesome. Thank you.
A little food for thought. Yeah, man.
Thank you.
All right, Brandon.
Just don't crush me with those big legs of yours, dude.
Yeah. Quadzilla. Brandon's, which is easiest for you and which is most difficult?
I'd say for me, the no-brainers. It's more of a mix of mentor and friend, but mentor would absolutely be the easiest, just because of my tenacity and absolute passion for learning things. I read multiple books a week. I constantly study and master things just for no reason, because I don't know it and it bothers me. It's just the way I'm wired. So a mentor absolutely would be the one I'm strong in. One that's most difficult for me would probably be a mixture of king and warrior, mostly warrior though, solely because I've just being a introvert a lot of my life, studying and learning things to myself, kind of being a lone wolf. I've been passive in the warrior aspect, and I've been agreeable. Frankness is something that's really hard for me, because I have enough empathy where I don't want to hurt other people's feelings being frank with them. So yeah, I would say it's
Missed
taken
that
me
train.
it's taken me probably a decade.
Yeah, I don't have that problem.
Yeah, he's like, hey, you suck. And I'm like, cool. Thanks, bro. Love you too.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's something I've worked on for the past decade pretty heavily to try to improve.
Well, I think we all identified something we're all working on, but yeah. All right, guys.
Yeah, no, all joking aside.
Almost through. So this one is number 9. How is taking initiative different from bossing people around? And
That's
Ooh,
easy.
this is
That's the difference between a leader and a boss.
Yep, I agree.
Leader.
about
And
your
you're
first
modeling
people.
it like he's saying, you model it. You actually go and you're willing to do it with those people, alongside those people, instead of just telling somebody to do it. So
Yeah.
Allowing someone to thrive versus trying to force them is so completely
Mm-hmm.
different. I had, excuse me, when I was with a company, I won't say the company just because of legal reasons, but my old boss, Sammy, let me just say that. He taught me that a boss will push a boulder up the hill and then tell you to take over, and they may be stronger than you, and you are going to fail catastrophically. A leader is going to push that boulder with you, let you take a little of its weight, and the second they see you're failing, they push even harder to show you how far you can truly go.
Yep.
And that's something he taught me, and that was so strong when he told me that. And I love Sammy like a father figure, man, and he's part of the reason my success in the industry. And so, yeah, that boulder, don't weigh so much when you have the right leader versus what Brandon said, a boss. A boss is somebody who's ego driven, who doesn't give a shit about what you have as goals, or there are selfish and reasons for money or for glory or ego. Whereas a leader is like, hey, take this credit, take this here, do that. They're the ones that are going to show you. And like I said, that person, no matter how wealthy they are, will take you, grab you, and pull you up.
Dustin?
Awesome. Yeah. One thing I love about medicine is the leadership aspect to it. It's very much like the military in the sense of pecking order and who says what and all that.
Yep.
And you can always tell the difference between teachers and leaders who just want to sound smart, and teachers and leaders who lead by example and just genuinely want you to be better. It's immediately apparent. It's the way they ask questions. There's a process called pimping in medicine, which I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Justin. All the students always get pimped. They ask them questions, blah, blah. And the true leaders, the people who want to see things get better, they are compassionate. They're asking questions to get the best out of their students and to make them think. And then unfortunately, there's some bosses, who just want to sound smart and just ask questions. And no matter what the answer is, it's going to be wrong because they want to prove how smart they are. And it's, these are 50, 60, 70-year-old men and women who their ego is more important than their community. And that's frustrating. So
annoying.
You could say they're abusing their mentor pillar.
That's a great.
You could say that they suck, but and there's that too.
So taking the initiative different than bossing people. I would say taking the initiative implies that like you're being involved with the process, whatever it is. You're being involved with the kindness towards this person, or to go back to military stuff, like it's the difference between saying, all right, guys, go do this thing in the hot sun, and you going and doing the thing in the hot sun with all your people. Yeah, you're not affording yourself comforts that your people aren't afforded. So I think just it means being involved. I think when in this context, comparing it against bossing. So bossing is just giving barking orders without any involvement. Number 10, last question from the book. In what areas do you easily take initiative, and in what areas do you struggle with taking initiative? Who would like to seize that one?
I'll take it. Friends, again, I take that. And King, I'm quick to jump into trying to be someone's friend. Even if it means acting a fool or starting the conversation or, making myself vulnerable. I think vulnerability is something that a lot of people lack these days as well. That and then the king role, I'm quick to jump in and lead, just because it's nice for others, for someone to just kind of take the reins and take the stress away from life sometimes, and just say, hey, I got it, I got your back, and I'm gonna make sure that we get there together. So yeah, definitely those two for me.
Also, I think this question is a little bit more open-ended. It's not just purely with the pillars, if that helps. I think it's kind of just in what areas of your life. Anyone else?
I think for me, taking initiative, the places that I find taking initiative most difficult is places where I'm taking risks. I'm overly calculated and analytical, so for me, I'm looking at all the possibilities that could go wrong instead of what could go right. And so for me, taking risks is the hardest thing for me to take initiative on.
So where is it easiest for you?
That is a great question. I would say probably where analyzation and logic are involved. So like a good example, if a friend has an issue and he wants me to analyze it or look at it, taking initiative to break it down and to help him out as a friend would be super easy for me because I just see the overall structure, able to help him out.
Okay.
I'd say mentorship's great for you, Brandon. You're great at being a mentor, man. You don't give yourself enough credit there.
Thanks.
Yeah, makes sense.
Dustin, what about you?
As far as doing things that I know I'm not good at, I really struggle taking the initiative on that. I'm not great at building things. I tend to struggle a little bit. Like, if you hand me an IKEA box and say, okay, build that desk, I hate that with a passion.
Or try to move a 350-pound couch with a sectional love seat out of your apartment in Atlanta. Yeah. That was fucking horrible. Let's just be real.
Oh my God, great example. Yeah. So that, stuff that I know I'm going to struggle with, I don't always take the initiative that I should to work on those weaknesses and be stronger with it, for sure. And then on the opposite end, if there's something I'm good at, I will spend all day, every day, taking the initiative to, continue to improve on that. So, I like to play to my strengths, and I think that's always going to be, it's more fun to work on stuff you're already good at.
Yeah.
For sure.
You're competitive for sure.
Exactly. Yep.
How about you, George?
Let's see. Areas I easily take initiative.
I'd say you're the best leader I've met, man. No, you can shake your head all you want, but you are literally like the epitome of a leader that I would follow into anything.
Well, I appreciate that.
I'm just gonna put that out there.
I would. Well, I guess just in that initiative, I don't struggle like getting involved in something, right? So if I, if something's, hey, we need someone to do this or whatever, I don't really have an issue kind of stepping up and just doing it. That's kind of a lame answer to that question, I guess, but
no, not really, man.
Areas I struggle. I think I struggle with. It sounds really bad, but just like staying in touch with family and stuff like that, just to checking in, and it's just so easy with like all the all the other things that are good, right? You want to be involved with my immediate family and whatnot, but just calling up my brother or calling up my cousins or whatever, and just taking 30 minutes out of my day. It kind of comes back to the friend thing, right? That's being compassionate instead of selfish. So I probably should be a lot better about taking that initiative of just checking in with friends and family more than I do. I think that's probably an area that I struggle with the most. It's just, I don't know. I guess I just fall back in the, I'm tired, or there's so many things going on, right? And it just kind of falls to the wayside. So, guess that answers that. Well, I know it is very late for you, Dustin. Would you like to drop off now, or do you guys have more?
Yeah,
things?
I'm gonna go past that. I'm fading.
Yeah. So, Dustin, appreciate your involvement. Thanks for staying up late with this, and it's been a lot of fun. I guess to the other two, if you guys want to keep talking about anything else that we didn't really address, or you wanted to keep going, we can. I can stay up a little bit longer, but otherwise we can.
I kind of just had one question.
You guys.
That I just
All right,
Love
see you, Dustin.
Awesome.
Later, buddy.
Yeah.
I had a question for you guys. What was the number one thing that you took away from this book, and how are you going to use it moving forward?
It's a good question. I think for me it was just reinforcing, because I've read this book before, but it had been a while. But just reinforcing how important it is to not forsake any of these facets of what it means to be a quote good man, and that the price of not doing that is damaging to my daughter, damaging to my wife, my marriage. So the consequences of not taking it seriously is essentially destroying my own life. So that it just reinforced how utterly important it is to put conscious effort into being a good husband and father. That sounds a little cliche, but just I mean,
no, it doesn't at all. And
the staying
I'll
power,
kinda...
the staying power chapter, right? Because there have been lots of times in my life where, in my marriage, where I wanted to call it quits, but just staying.
Oh, you didn't think about consequence, yeah.
Right, no, right. In the moment,
we've had conversations, yeah.
So it just reinforced how important it is.
No, dude, that's crazy. Yeah, I completely agree. Let's be real. It's a society where everything's around us. There's so many things pulling us in 50,000 directions, and it's hard to stay focused on one straight line, one straight family down the rest of the road, and not allowing things to come into and attack that family or attack your way of life. And it's hard, man. For me, I would say the warrior aspect, something my wife said actually today on a walk. We're walking through our neighborhood. It's beautiful Louisiana. It's hot, humid, and I'm sweating 50,000 ounces of water. She said something to me that kind of hit home, and it frustrated me at first, and I kind of kicked back at it, but she's good at calling me on my bullshit, and she's probably going to watch this and laugh her ass off. But I am terrible at the warrior aspect because, and this is something I'm going to cover. We're going to go over this. It's a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I'm sure most of you have read it, but it's going to be my theme, so to speak, for podcast number 5. Emotional intelligence is such an important thing in life, and I carry it in my career. I carry it in my home life. But when something threatens my way of life or my comfort with my family or my loved ones, I am quick to respond like a brute. And she pointed that out to me today. Like, I'm quick to act macho or to threaten. And it's not acting macho. It's really, I really will be that person. And I really will do something stupid just because that's who I am. intrinsically, but like at the same time, I don't need to be that person. I'm better than that person. I've grown up. But I'm quick to defend the people and the things that I love because I've seen what happens when you don't do those things. I've seen what happens when you don't stand up for somebody who needs you to stand up for them. So it's a double-edged sword for me, and it's something I struggle with. So yeah, moving forward, it's going to be how can I respond emotionally intelligent in any situation, no matter what, and that whether that be my kid say something that pisses me off beyond recognition, am I going to respond violently, or am I going to say, okay, this is what he really truly probably meant, or he didn't mean that at all. Here's my response, and I'm going to stop and think about it. You know what I mean? So there's the response that you give to the world is a very, very, very big thing. And always being that calm, cool, collected voice is something that I try to harp on. And when I'm not that, it bothers me. So,
Brandon?
B, what about you?
I would say that it just kind of further concreted my kind of ideology towards everything already, which is you just have to, like you said, the staying power. You have to constantly pursue a better version of yourself. Um, I'm always going to have to constantly pursue a weakness in one of those pillars to make sure that they stay in balance. So I think the greatest thing the book pointed out was there's certain qualities that each of those pillars um, people will exhibit when they have strengths in those pillars. And so what it did for me is it just kind of shined light on what good qualities are, and then of course on the other side of that, what I lack. And so I think it's just kind of gave me a renewed vigor to work on the things where I lack, and just keep carrying forward and being present, because regardless if I'm failing or not, at least I'm there trying. So I do want to say, now that we're wrapping up, the next podcast will be on emotional regulation and just bettering your knowledge in child behavioral psychology, like realizing your kids don't have all the puzzle pieces. And so our book is going to be Meg Meeker's Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And I feel like it's such a great book to use as a discussion point, because it helps us realize from all the pillars how to approach our children in a better, healthier manner. So I'm really excited for the next podcast for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't want to drag things on, but can I add two things?
Yeah, no, I actually have like a couple more tangents I want to go down. Now that
I'm excited to go down this road actually, because I would like to say what I think you guys are strong at.
I like that. Okay.
My brother, I would say, is amazing at friend. And don't take this the wrong way, but it's because Brandon's an introvert and he didn't have the greatest friends growing up. It always seemed like my friends kind of became his friends. And it's because I was good at choosing who I kept around me, and figuring out what I wanted in life very, very quickly. And that was a skill set. That wasn't something that just most people have. So I'm not like giving myself kudos by any means, but I'm just good at that. And so the fact that Brandon held on to that, like, Brandon's an introverted person, but he's so incredibly intelligent. He has so much to offer to the world. And that's why I love that he's a part of this podcast, because he is the best of friends. Like, Brandon has always, and this is not like a identical twin thing. I mean, it might be a little bit, but he's always been like such an awesome friend, and he's always passionate and compassionate, and he's committed. He keeps his promises. He's the energy that connects men to others in the world, whether he realizes it. So that was something that stuck with me. Now, for me personally, George, I feel like you hit the mentor spot. And the reason I think that is because you have failed a lot in your life. We've had those talks about trials and tribulations for us both. We've both failed a lot in a lot of aspects. And I'm not going to go too deep in that, but you've learned from those things. So you're quick to teach on those things. You're quick to model and explain and train. And then you also have a very spiritual heart, no matter how far you fall from grace on certain things. And I don't mean that in a negative way or condescending way. I'm just saying, like, you know how to teach life. So I would say that was yours. And I know Dustin's no longer on here, but I would say that Dustin is probably, whether he thinks he's worse at it or not, he's a great king, because he didn't really have one growing up, and he knows how to look out for others. I say that your weaknesses are also your greatest strengths, and I think that's so true with these four pillars, because Dustin didn't have an authoritative figure or a true leader who showed him order, mercy, and justice. He just has those qualities naturally. And I think that's such an incredible thing, which makes me say what I said earlier, where I would follow him as a king. Like, he has that provisionary heart. He looks forward and he cares about the people in his charge. Now, that being said, I'm curious, if we were to push this in a female aspect, what do you think your wives are strongest at?
Yeah, that's actually, I think, one of the things where it's like says face yourself is to like write down some of these things and then have your wife review it and have her answer what she would have said. So
Nice.
this is kind of.
I'm curious what Ainsley would say. I'm sure she's gonna tell me if she sees this. So.
I want to do this. I gotta use the bathroom. I'll be right back in like 1 minute. But carry on without me, and I'll hop right back in.
No, you're fine. Brandon, go ahead. Talk to me a little bit about what you think Summer is best at.
Oh man. Well, that's an easy one. Mentor. I mean, she's built to teach children, and
He's a teacher.
yeah, she's literally a school teacher. The way that she carries herself around children and how passionate and loving she is around children, it's her God-given gift. She even teaches Sunday school, and man, kids both at school and at church just absolutely eat her up. They love her. She's one of those teachers that truly cares about her students, gives them hope, and makes them realize that they are worthy of love and respect, and that they're capable of wonderful things. And a lot of kids lack that. So I would absolutely say she's a mentor. So what about Ainsley?
George. Ooh, that's tough, man, because she's a spitfire, man. She's different. She's so compassionate. She's so loving. Like, and that's the reason she does what she does, being a pediatric dentist. Like, she wants to help kids and make their lives better and make parents trust in that. And I don't know, man. I've kind of struggled with that because she kind of fits a few of these categories.
Well balanced for sure. I think friend is one of her strengths.
Yeah, she's super, absolutely. Like, she's, it's hard, man, because as her spouse, like, having been through a shitty divorce and been treated certain ways and been through, let's just say, not the greatest of relationship aspects and being treated certain ways, it changed my outlook and perspective on life. And so I appreciate every little thing that she does, even the bad stuff. Like, I mean, every marriage has its struggles, and we have ours for sure, but she's so good at a lot of things, and it's kind of not intimidating, but like, just great. I don't know. I wouldn't say she's a king. And the reason I say that is because she's quick to lend that off to me, and that comes back to females wanting somebody like their father. Her dad is such a leader, and Scott, he's
Great guy. Great guy.
oh, incredible, man. Such a born leader, and he has that provisionary heart, and he's always thinking. I mean, he's a financial advisor, so he's always thinking ahead for other people. That's literally his job. And he watches over, not only their physical assets, but their mental as well, and provides the justice and order for her family. And so I kind of try to feel like the same for me, and I'm the authority, and he's the leader, and he's the authority there as well. So he's definitely not king, but I struggle with warrior in the fact that I talked about, I guess, emotional intelligence. I've had ups and downs in my life, so I know, and I've dealt with a lot of emotions, whereas most people have not at my age. So I wouldn't say she's the warrior, just because yeah, she has high moral standards and high principles, but she's not the protector more as she is, I would say, probably mentor and friend. I think you're right. I think friend first and foremost, maybe, but mentor as well because she likes to teach parents to have the structure and control for their kids, especially with teeth, um, so that they can keep their health in line and they can, kind of guide them in the right ways there, because that's actually her profession. But then again, like when it comes to excuse me. Her nieces, treats them like her own children, and our nieces and nephews, she treats them the same way, and she likes to be that mentor aspect and teach what she can, and she definitely has a spiritual heart. She's steadfast in her faith as a Catholic. She likes to model and explain and train. She does not mansplain, thank God, because I couldn't deal with that. But I'd say probably friend. Um, she's always endearing. She's always got the heart, um, to kind of go where she needs to be. And she's a good commitment maker, promise keeper. But man, is she organized? So yeah, I'd say probably friend. It's a long answer would be friend.
So what
To George.
what question are we answering?
What do you think your wife is strongest at? The two, one or two aspects?
Um, I guess it's a little bit weird because they're the pillars of manhood, but
I know, and I get that, but we're kind
I
of
thought,
explaining like,
yeah, I thought you were asking the question, what would they say we are good and bad at? Maybe that's the next thing. And then when they watch it, they can be like, no, no, no.
yeah, they're gonna let us know.
Let's see. I think it's hard to say, because trying to look at it through the lens of like a feminine lens. I think my wife would most be the friend role. She's just well, I don't know though. It's hard to say because she's like I guess in a sense it's a little bit the king because she is just so proactive on caring for our household, and I don't just mean like us the people, but like preserving and keeping our house clean and taking care of like buying clothes for Raylan for school and all that kind of stuff, and getting all the school shopping done. Like that's already all done. It's been done for like 2 months.
Takes so much initiative.
Yeah, she takes a lot of initiative on just preparing us. So I guess that's kind of the king thing, right? It's the provisionary heart aspect there, but it's also kind of the friend role there because she's when it comes to keeping commitments and things like that, she when it comes to our marriage, she's always kept her commitment. Of the two of us, those who has failed in keeping that commitment is me. So, by comparison, I abdicated that aspect to her, in our marriage. So I would say that she displays that pretty heavily as well. And I'm, Whitney, if you're watching, very thankful for you and for sticking with me through all the ups and downs.
Nice. I'll go back into what you said. What we think our wives would.
Yeah. So let's do that. What would your wife say you're best at, and what would your wife say you're worst at?
Angie's probably gonna give me immortal hell for this, but we'll see. I think she'd probably place me as the king or friend. I love to talk, so she's probably gonna say friend more so. I don't know. I'm gonna say king because she's quick to. Yes, she likes to be in control of certain things. That's just her nature. But as a type A personality, but at the end of the day, she wants me to take control. She wants me to lead the household. She likes when I take care of the things that need taken care of, and she really appreciates when I do those things. So I would say king for sure.
And what would she say you are worst at?
Warrior, 100%.
Okay.
The brute. Asshole when I want to be. I mean, I can be a dick. I'm the quick to anger when someone says something absolutely ridiculous, and I'm gonna be the first person to step in your face and say, "Hey, try me." So yeah, that's my problem, and I need to kind of reel that in a little bit. And she'll be the first to tell you that. I know she will, because she literally said it today to me. So.
All right, Brandon, what about you? What would Summer say you're best at and struggle the most at?
I think she'd say I'm really good at most all of them, just hybrid wise. I think she knows that I'm very hybrid in my stuff, but I would say probably a king, just because I'm a visionary. Like I have a lot of planning involved and long term and short term goals for us as a couple and a family. And yeah, I'd say king for sure.
I'd say I know what your weakness is for her.
What would she say is your weakest one?
I'd probably say, man, that's a tough one. I'd probably say warrior. Not in the
friend.
aspect.
I think she feels like you're too introverted sometimes. I feel like she doesn't like some of the friends you've made. I would say friend. I think you have a shitty choice in friends sometimes, because they treat you like absolute dirt, because they're just shitty people, and you're a good person with a kind heart. And so yeah, I would say friend was your weakness. And I think
Yeah,
Summer would probably agree with me on that.
I would say warrior, not in the brute sense, but in the sense that agreeableness, just too passive. I've let things go that I shouldn't have, and so I think that's one of the key things that
That's a good point.
you would have to touch on something. It would probably be something like that.
That's where we're polar opposites. I feel like that's where my wife's going to get my ass about it.
I'm very heavy in giving people a measure of grace. So instead of being aggressive or I don't know, super straightforward about things, I'd rather just give them grace and let it slide. So
I'd rather give him a knuckle sandwich.
Yeah.
But you, George?
I actually think Whitney would say I'm best at the mentor role.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think she would say that, because I think when I'm my weakest, I abuse king, warrior, and friend the most. Right? I don't think I really abuse the mentor one. Maybe a little. I do. I do like having things a certain way a lot of times, but honestly, it's more about me not. Yeah, I've struggled with this my whole life. It's like how you say it, not what you're saying. Yeah, it's the tactfulness of it, and it's like a lot of times it's not that I want to control people. It's like I legitimately just do know a better way on, like, hey, you can save 5 minutes or whatever. And to me, like, I'm just like, well, you can save 5 minutes. Why wouldn't you do it that way? And so, like, anyway, I think other than that, I do pretty good on the mentor stuff. Man, what's she saying I'm worst at?
Weakness. Yeah, that's what I'm curious.
I'm honestly torn between, like, it either be friend or warrior, and I say the warrior one because, well, I'm just looking at, I'm rereading my notes and, like, looking at the bullet
I get
points.
it. I get it.
Because warrior has, like, principles and higher standards that you'll live by, stand by, spend yourself for, and die for them. And I mean, I've messed up in our marriage, right? I've done, I've forsaken that, but that also kind of goes with commitment from friend, commitment maker, promise keeper. So I don't know.
No, but you're committed. You're a committed individual. You have let outside. Sorry, my son's screaming.
I think she'd probably say I struggle more with the friend role, just because compassion and empathy don't come very naturally to me. So that's probably the one she'd say I struggle with. I kind of wanted to circle back to, like, the lies the world tells us and how it contrasts with what is talked about in this chapter, and for me, why I felt this would be just such a core, like, fundamental episode that we do, this concept of authentic masculinity, and And I think that term tender warrior is just straight up the best term for that, because nothing in this chapter and nothing about being a man in this context is about dominating others or being a toxic masculine figure and, all these kinds of negative examples we have. And I mean, honestly, if you look at it too, even the masculine heroes that we looked up to, I would jokingly said like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, like action hero type role from the 90s and stuff like that. I mean, that's only part of the picture. That's like two of the pillars, and if you really look at, real men in recent history, they're not the ones who made the most money or, had the hottest wife or any of that kind of stuff. They were men who refused to back down when they knew that they were right and just, and they stood up to defend others. And so,
yeah, Jordan Peterson's a great example.
yeah, honestly, I want to almost, I wish, wait, I can't do it because we'll get like blocked on YouTube or whatever, but I want to go like his recent response to him getting, deplatformed on Twitter or whatever. And he's not arrogant, but he's firm and like, no, this is insanity. I refuse to take back what I said because what I'm speaking is the truth. And if the truth offends you, then you have the problem, not me. And I mean, his response was just it was fiery, but it was measured. He wasn't a brute in what he was saying. He's passionate about it, but he was also very calm and collected in what he said. And, just a great example of a guy he's a world traveler. He's experienced a lot of different cultures. He's not a large, imposing individual in a physical sense, but in terms of his understanding of life, he's got a lot to offer. And he's fighting back against the modern experts, and I think we need more. Personally, I think we need more men like him to stand up and speak for, the vulnerable, and if you want to get on the spiritual sense, I believe it was Paul, I forget which book of the Bible he wrote this, but he said true religion is this, caring for orphans and widows in their distress.
Yes.
And I mean, that's the protector role, right? But in order to truly care for orphans and widows in their distress, you also have to be caring and compassionate and empathetic and take the initiative against the lies of the day or against the enemies of the day to do that. And that's why I really wanted to do this episode so early in putting our podcast together, because the topics that are brought up here probably going to offend a lot of people. But I don't care, because I believe that these are true. And even if you're not a Christian, if you're not a spiritual person and you read this book, if you just want to kind of maybe like, you can still gain a lot from what Stu Weber talks about in this book, these 4 pillars and why they're important from a secular perspective, without buying into the spiritual aspect. And I guess I just wanted to like make that clear. I mean, I would hope that obviously you would change your mind on that, but I'm not going to force that upon anyone. The principles he's speaking about, I just believe so strongly that if more men would follow these more, how much better off would our society be today?
And I'm gonna go ahead and point something out that someone else is probably gonna point out and try to attack. Someone like Jordan Peterson or others. They're flawed men. They have flaws.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing too. Is like this
and
cancel
if we
culture
go back
is
to the
insanity.
Bible, like we talk, Christ wants the broken. He doesn't want whole men. He doesn't want perfect men. He wants the broken.
Yeah, when I think that
asked for
goes
that.
back to the king role, right? Order and mercy and justice. That's also you admitting when you're wrong, right? And so like, if I
absolutely
if I mess up and I don't hide it or act like I'm perfect, I apologize to my wife. I apologize to my daughter. I explain how I was wrong, and I'm gonna not do that again. Like that's leadership. That's not a tyrant and be, well, you messed up, or you're my subject. I'm never wrong. So yeah, I mean that's another reason this whole cancel culture thing is insane. Is just, oh, you said this 20 years ago. Well, yeah, I was 15, or whatever, right? Like, or yeah, I was 25. I'd sure hope when I'm 45, I think a little bit more maturely about the world than when I was 25.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah.
people say stupid things when they're younger, or they say things and they change their views. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So
Yeah. Oh, shit.
hang in there, little
Yeah.
guy.
No, you're fine. I'm watching my son. He's in the middle of his sleep cycles and
Squirming.
in the throes of I'm screaming, but I'm not awake.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyways, yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of great men who have a lot of great perspectives, like Jordan Peterson,
Mm-hmm.
who are flawed men. I mean, we're all flawed. Let's be real. I mean, I know I am. I've got a lot of flaws, and I'm working on them day in and day out, and we try. But I really want to get down to the nitty gritty. Like, what would Kim say about Dustin? And what is Dustin
Yeah.
gonna be great at, and what he's gonna be not good at? I want to hear Kim's opinion on that. No, but all joking aside, I'll tell you what I think, since I know Dustin pretty damn well. I think Dustin, like I said, king. And I think, uh, with what he said about how Kim has kind of relinquished some things, just kind of speaking for him. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I'm sure he will let me know. Um, I think he's going to be good at king, and I want to say he may not be as good at mentor because he's kind of afraid to push his opinions on people because he is empathetic in ways, you know? So that's just me speaking for kind of Dustin on that aspect. But yeah,
Look,
no, I mean, to go back to what you're saying, like, we're all flawed, man. Like, we all got our shit.
Yeah.
And, we can't eat ourselves up and let things happen, but to affect us daily in that aspect. But moving forward and learning from mistakes and learning from people like Jordan Peterson who have sage advice, or others who you've mentioned previously. I think growth is, like I said, failing. Like, you're gonna go
Yeah.
through some shit before you get the rainbows and sunshine. You're gonna hit that rain cloud before you get through there, before you get that rainbow. So I
Yeah. I
don't know,
mean,
man. Like,
I've learned the most about myself through the times I didn't succeed in life. Um, I just think that's how it's meant to be. And like, I mean, personally, I failed ranger school, right? It was, at the time, it was like this crushing, it was so embarrassing for me. Like, I was like, man, I never even, like, when I was preparing myself for it, I never even considered that I could possibly fail. I mean, I was just so committed to, like, I'm gonna get through this and I'm gonna do it. And I failed the land nav, right? Like, insert Lieutenant joke
you
here.
fell asleep after you'd been awake for 72 hours.
Yeah,
and
but like, I had two choices then. I can, like, be sorry for myself and, like, oh, woe is me, whatever. Or what I chose to do was own it. Yeah, I failed. I screwed up. You know what? I'm not perfect, and I need to work that much harder to prove that I deserve to be, your leader. And so in a lot of ways, I think it made me way more of a man than I ever would have been, because if I would have made it through, I just would have been arrogant and cocky and like, oh, look at me, I've got my ranger tab. And if you don't know what that is in the Army, it's kind of a big deal. It's a brutal, challenging school. Stu Weber talked about it. Even he went through it back in the day. And yeah, so I didn't have that badge of honor on my shoulder. And so I had to work harder to prove my merit through just my character and qualities and performance and things like that. And that's a very literal sense in the military. But life's gonna knock you down, and you're gonna fail at things. And I think this is where I'm really glad we're getting into the topics that you guys want to bring up about, like, emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, because it's in those moments where you have to kind of look inward and remind yourself what you're made of, and your choice is, despair or resolve. And
affect others.
yeah, but here's the thing too, is like, that he talks about in the book here that we cover tonight is that if men don't choose that staying power, that yeah, maybe I did fail, but I'm going to get back up and I'm going to either try again or course correct and do something different. The consequence is the failure of our society, because like I'm just rereading through like some of the chapter on staying power. Since 1920, the divorce rate in this country has increased by 1,420%, and he wrote this book in 1992, so it's probably higher than that. That's a lot of pain. The baby boomers are divorcing at a rate twice that of their parents. Pity the children. Sociologist Andrew Cherlin of Johns Hopkins University says today's children are the first generation in this country's history who think divorce and separation are a normal part of life. Child psychologist Dr. David Elkind writes, we see more children who show symptoms of stress, headaches, stomach aches, low mood, learning problems. As they get older, many of them feel they've missed an important part of their life. They feel used and abused. My concern is if they don't feel cared about, then they can't ever care about anyone else, let alone themselves. We may be creating a large number of children who are emotional misfits. So, I mean, just, if you do nothing else in your life, but you fight for your marriage and you keep that going and you raise your kids to the best of your ability, I don't care if you make 10 cents an hour. I would argue that you've done more for the world and more for the lives of others than people like an Elon Musk or whatever, who are developing amazing technologies and whatever. Because at the end of the day, that's our number one charter as fathers, is your kids and your spouse. I mean, I don't know how much more simply I can put it. I'm ashamed that I almost like added into that pain. I mean, we were literally on the brink, like literally on the very teetering on the edge of. I had a lawyer on retainer and everything, and we decided to rein it back in. And it's just so easy. It's so easy to.
Great for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it, man. Like,
it's so easy to do the wrong thing,
I did the wrong. I mean, I didn't do the wrong thing. I did the right thing for me, but
Yeah.
I went through divorce, and my situation. It was not.
It takes two to fight for a marriage. You can't,
Yeah, and I couldn't fight for that person, and I'm not going to go too deep into that, but let's just say that it wasn't a good situation, and my situation, and it was hard, man. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. Not fun. And I learned a lot about myself in that, and my failures and in that relationship and in my life, and I felt guilty about it. But then, when I came to realize some other things, I didn't feel so bad. But when it comes back to fathers, my father was the camel or the straw that broke the camel's back. 100%. I did not want to be that failure in the family that got a divorce. I didn't want to be that person who failed their commitment, and I just could not take another day of that misery, because misery loves company, and I promise you it does. And if a person is going to be miserable, there's nothing you can do to change it. Doesn't matter how happy, how great, how whatever you are, you're not going to change someone's colors. And it took a good hard look at my life, and one of my best friends, Harold, telling me he didn't recognize who it was, my family not getting to see me, and then my father ultimately on a walk through his neighborhood telling me it's okay to fail, move on from it. And when he told me that, it's exactly what I did.
But I think that highlights, just like Jordan Peterson says, is the most important thing is to make sure that when you're selecting somebody that you're spending the rest of your life with, that every foundational belief and theology that you have has to intertwine and line up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's going to be so much strife and struggle, and that's why Summer and I dated for so long, as we wanted to make sure 100%. Plus, we also wanted to wait until after college. We didn't want to get married in the midst of that. But as far as divorce isn't even a word that exists. We literally are going to fight it out together. It's not me versus her. It's
Mhm.
me and her versus whatever problem we have.
Yeah.
That's because you're two good people, and George has a
Well,
great
I
person
mean,
too. And
I mean, a lot of it is what you bring into the marriage too, right? So, like for me and Whitney, we just had never really dealt with our stuff, right? I was still a 16-year-old boy trapped in a man's body, and she was still a little girl trapped in a woman's body. And when you're dealing with
yeah,
when you're dealing with adult issues, but you're reacting to them like children, then yeah, that's not a great recipe for success. And so that's again why, like, I talked about the three. You need that older man. Like, I did not surround myself with good um like I had good friends that are the same age, right? Here we are. But I didn't have older men to challenge me and hold me accountable
hold you accountable. Yeah,
to my weaknesses outside of the military, right? That's a very secular job related type of accountability. I didn't have anyone outside of that to be like, "Hey man, that's not cool. You're not treating your wife right. And yeah, maybe she did this wrong, but you're responsible for this, this and this." And that's a hard conversation. And it wasn't until we moved to Texas and got plugged into a church down there, and when we were on the brink of calling it quits, I called up my small group leader who was in his 70s and he had just retired, and he was like, "Well, I hear you," and he listened. He's a very calm guy, kind of like Dustin. He's not very fiery in your face type of guy, but he just started putting, "Well, have you thought about this? And what about this that you're doing, and this, and this?" And he wasn't even like fired up or anything, but I was just like he took a shotgun and just blew me out. It was like, man, nope, 100%, you're right. No, I have no excuse. Like but if you don't have that in your life, if you don't surround yourself with people like that, then how are you ever going to get that feedback? And I think that's the initiative part here of this book that he was talking about. Is part of that is, I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, I just don't know anyone." Then go find someone, man. It's not, you don't have to do church. Like, there's so many groups out there wherever you are. You have the internet. Like, look up a local. You can be fans of a sports team or something. Find the guy who's 60 and married and has 6 kids or whatever and has never been divorced, and just ask him how that worked. And maybe he's got a couple things figured out. I don't know. I mean,
oh, I got a story. I'm sure he's got a story.
yeah, but that's my point. Is like you have to take the initiative to help yourself, right? You have to, and I learned this ironically in my sales career when I joined this massive corporation, and I was like, man, I don't know anything about. They hired me for my potential as like a former military guy, hoping that I would like learn quickly, type of thing. But I had zero sales skills. I had zero training. I didn't go to school for it. No experience doing sales. And I reached out to one of the VPs in the company, pretty important guy, and I was like, "Hey, I'm new. I just got out of the army. I'm looking for mentors who can maybe help me kind of figure out the company and how to do this job." And he was like, "Okay, well, I'll give you 30 minutes." And I met with him, and he was like, "Look, I'm going to give you a couple names, but you're in sales now. You need to take it upon yourself to go pitch them why you're worth their time to mentor you." And I was like, "Dang." It's like really profound. Like, I didn't even think about the fact that I was asking these guys to give up their time for me, just some new kid in the company. But it's true. You need to take that initiative for yourself to give yourself a fighting chance. And it's like help me, help you type of thing, right? Like, if you're really wanting to better your life, you're not going to make excuses about it. You're going to go find a way to make it happen. And so for me,
Yep.
I didn't figure that out till I was almost 30, unfortunately. But all right, rant over. But I think that initiative piece in this chapter for me was honestly the most important part of it. The pillars are obviously so critical, but I think that's the difference between a real man and one who just acts like a man, is true initiative for the right reason.
Yep.
All right, boys, we're approaching 3.5. So
That is true.
I say we get some closing statements here, and
Okay.
let's carry on to the next one.
Indeed. All right, Brandon, closing statements from you, and we'll go around the horn.
Yeah, sure. I would just say any father out there that's looking to better their family life, start with yourself. Try to find some balance there. Start loving yourself. Start creating self-esteem. I would say anchor yourself in Christ, If you're not religious, I would say give them a chance. Challenge it. God will prove otherwise. He will meet you there. Where you're at. I would also say that you have to make sure that you shift your priorities if they're not in the right places. So if money is what you're chasing, chase your family, chase love, chase betterment, and 1% a day at a time. And if you keep consistent, even when you're not motivated, be consistent, because the consistency will create the motivation when you see the results. So just be consistent and just keep trying to improve yourself, man. That's the best thing. And if you need help, we are in the process of creating a community in our Discord.
Yep.
And you can post questions and comments on any of our videos, and we'll be glad to go through them. And yeah, we're here for you guys.
On that note, I will make a permanent link to the Discord and post it in the comments of this video, so you can join and say hi. Justin, go ahead. Your closing thoughts.
A lot of thoughts. Let's say, as a father, just be you, man. Do it. Do what feels right. Be there for your spouse, man. If you have one, if you're lucky enough to have one. If you're not, be there for yourself. Show up every day for yourself. Because if you don't show up for yourself, you can't show up for others. And do the gym, do music, do whatever makes you happy. No judgment. I'm a complete nerd. I was showing this. I was dragon shooting flames. I was showing that to George because I'm building an office with all kind of shit and cool stuff from this podcast and from my work aspect as well, which they'll never see that side of things. But be you, man. Be unapologetically you. Don't be afraid to be who you are. Share the world who you are. You never know who's going to appreciate it, especially your kids. Being unique around your kids is an incredible thing, especially as a father. Like, showing your kids that it's okay to be who they are. That's probably one of the most important things you can do. So closing thoughts, try to be balanced. Like Brandon said, be a jack of all trades. Show the world what you're made of, but at the end of the day, don't apologize for it. That'd be my closing arguments.
All right. I will close with a few thoughts myself. I'll start with this sentence from the book in the Staying Power chapter. It says, "The calling of every man is to offer stability to a world full of chaos." And I think if we just focused on that a little bit more in our society, offer some stability to this chaotic world, you can maybe change your little corner of the world for the better. And I think whether you're married or not, if you're not a father yet, maybe you're just a guy who came across this podcast and like, what are these guys talking about? This is still highly valuable to you. These 4 pillars, right? If you master these before you're married, how much better will your marriage be, right? I mean, like, speaking from my own marriage, if I would have worked through my stuff prior to being married, I mean, how much more complete would I have been for my wife? How much more compassionate would I have been in times of turmoil? I was not the man I am today. And unfortunately, I had to go through a lot of pain and struggle to get better. So I learned like a jokingly, the hard way, not the smart way. So, and then just to reiterate one more time, the staying power. I mean, for all my faults and for my wife and all of her faults and all of our struggles in our marriage, we both decided to stay and both decided to endure. And man, am I glad we did, because we've been married for coming up on 9 years, pretty close to 9 years now. And we have a beautiful daughter who will be 7 soon. And
Amen.
if we would have walked away from that, yeah, we're getting old. If we would have walked away from that for any of the reasons that we felt was right, and these last couple of years, we've had so many great memories and just experiences that probably wouldn't have happened. And it is worth fighting for. Your marriage is worth fighting for. Your relationship is worth fighting for. Your kids are worth fighting for. Staying power is the ultimate outcome of having these 4 pillars. And I'm far from a perfect man. I have lots of weaknesses. My wife will tell you. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I mean, I legitimately do, and she knows because she has to live with my weaknesses. So it's not about being perfect. It's just about trying to be better. And I think, it's not my story to tell necessarily, but there's a guy named Chad Robichaud who founded Mighty Oaks, and he was on just at a high level, real quick. In summary, to the world, he looked like a rock star, right? Marine Force Recon operator, became a Strike Force MMA champion, tons of money, fame, all that kind of stuff. But his marriage was totally dead. And he finally just decided that he was going to make it right and refused to quit. And for a long time, his wife rejected his efforts, but he just never gave up, and they stayed married, and they have kids that are adults now that are having their own kids and all that kind of stuff. And if he wouldn't have stayed, if he wouldn't have kept trying to make it work, then it wouldn't have. And I just, how many men have walked out maybe one round too soon? And until that bell rings, just keep getting back up, keep staying in it. And your endurance and your perseverance and you just making an effort daily to be that much better for your family will be noticed eventually. And you may not see the fruits of that effort for a long time, but it will pay off. And so I just encourage anyone out there struggling right now that I know what it's like to be in the midst of a very difficult marriage and things not being good, and just every day you wake up feels like it's darker than the last. But if you just do one right thing, one time better than you did before, eventually it's going to turn, and it will be worth it. And you'll come out of it at one point and look back, and it won't be perfect, but you'll be tougher because of it, and your marriage will be better because of it too. So
Absolutely.
I think that's a good place to end. Guys, thanks so much for the discussion. I think we got through a lot of really intimate discussion tonight about who we are and things we struggled with. And, I just can't stress enough how great this chapter is. Brandon, you raised it that he did write a subsequent book, I guess, called The Four Pillars. So I guess I have some more reading to do to read in depth on the 4 pillars. But I just, back when I first read this book and read these things, it's like, wow, that's so profound that, it's lost in our society today. So I just wanted to be a voice putting the truth out there, giving guys a blueprint for how to be better. And I think we accomplished that tonight. So if you watched this whole thing so far, we're at like 3.5 hours. Appreciate you sticking with us. And Brandon, what's the book we're going to read for the next episode?
It's Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters.
Okay.
Meg Meeker.
All right. So in a couple weeks, we'll be back for episode number 4, talking about its emotional regulation, right, is the core topic. Okay.
And children's psychology, behavioral psychology.
Okay. So strong fathers, strong daughters, emotional regulation. Back in a couple weeks. Justin and Brandon. Dustin had to leave, unfortunately. Thanks for the time, guys, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.